Let us pray. Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decrease justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, with thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name do most humble beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public will, peace, and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen. Thank you very much, Chaplain. Good morning, Senators. And I would ask Madam Clerk to please allow the new Senators to take the oath, please.
I, Tommy Descard, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to St. Lucia, that I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of St. Lucia, and I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of St. Lucia, so help me God.
Left hand. I, Elisha Norbert, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to St. Lucia, and I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of St. Lucia, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge my responsibilities to the people of St. Lucia. So help me God.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning again, Senators. I have received correspondence from the Speaker of the House of Assembly advising that the following motions and bills were passed in the House of Assembly and forwarded to the Senate for its concurrence. Value-Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 3 Order. Value-Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 5 Order. Value-Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve draft Value-Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 Order. Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, Resolution of Parliament to approve draft Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, Amendment of Schedule 3 Order. Value-Added Tax Act, Resolution of Parliament
to approve value-added tax amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 order. And the bills: Community Tourism Development Amendment, Eastern Caribbean Citizen by Investment Regulatory Agreement, Citizen by Investment Amendment, Pensions Amendment. Senators, I have received correspondence from Senators Dominic Fede and Harold Stanislaus advising of their resignations from the Senate effective October 27, 2025. On behalf of the Senate, I take this opportunity to thank them for their contributions to the upper house and wish them all the best in the future. In the same vein, I wish to welcome Senator Tommy Descott and Senator Elisha Norbert. I wish you a very fruitful journey here with us in the upper house. I have also received an excuse from Senator Angelina Ferrapolius, who has indicated that she will be unable to attend today's sitting. Before moving to the other announcements, Senators, I wish to ask you to spare thought for the islands of Jamaica, Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, that have been touched or impacted severely by Hurricane Melissa. So I pray that we all remember them, and whatever we can do in our individual and group capacities to support our brothers and sisters in the region, that we should do. Senators, I would like to report that on August 11, 2025, I participated in the second Parliamentary Forum of Latin America and the Caribbean in Mexico City within the framework of the 16th Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean. This conference was hosted by the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, UN Women, together with the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, the Chamber of Deputies, and the Senate of the Republic of General Congress of the United Mexican States. The central theme of the conference was transformations in the political, economic, social, cultural, and environmental spheres to promote a care society and gender equality. At this conference, I presented on two topics. One, advancing the equal and inclusive representation of women in decision-making systems in Latin America and the Caribbean for the fulfillment of the Regional Gender Agenda, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and the 2030 Agenda. And I also participated in the Regional Conference on Women in Latin America and the Caribbean from August 12 to 15 and presented on links between consolidation of parity democracies and the advancement of the care society in Latin America and the Caribbean. 2, I wish to report that I represented the Global Changemaker Academy for Parliamentarians, GCAP, at the Society for Ecological Restoration, SIR 2025, at a conference in Denver, Colorado from September 30th to October 3rd, 2025. This Global Changemaker Academy for Parliamentarians is a flagship program organized to bring together sitting members of parliament from around the world to strengthen legislative action on sustainable land management and ecosystem restoration. I think Senator Pauline Antoine has attended this conference as well, this academy. The conference was hosted at the United Nations Convention to combat desertification, together with the United Nations System Staff College and the G20 Global Land Initiative. I was invited to speak on the theme, Restoring Land, Shaping Laws, Advancing Legislative Action for Ecosystem Restoration, and I shared on St. Lucia's perspective. I wish to thank the officers from the Department of Sustainable Development for their support, especially Mr. Eulampius Frederick for such invaluable assistance. The Honorable Claudius J. Francis, Speaker of the House of Assembly, Madam Clerk of the Parliament, Mrs. Esmeline Cox-Jean-Louis, and myself attended the 68th Commonwealth Parliamentary Conference hosted by the Parliament of Barbados and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association from the 5th to the 12th October 2025. The conference was held under the theme, The Commonwealth, a Global Partner. Many workshops and meetings were held during the 68th CPC. My participation in one of the small branches workshop was as a panelist where I presented on the topic, Building Trust and Transparency, Financial Transparency in Parliaments and Elections. At the conference, Her Excellency, Honorable Mia Motley MP, Prime Minister of Barbados, delivered the Emilia Lacfacar Memorial Lecture. At the 68th CPC, the Parliament of St. Lucia received an award as part of the pilot project organized by PopVox aimed at modernizing the Parliament's operations. PopVox Foundation supports global democratic resilience by helping legislatures leverage emerging technologies and open data platforms to modernize legislative workflows, enhance real-time information sharing, and ensure data sovereignty. One major component of this initiative is the introduction of advanced speech-to-text software intended to update the preparation of Hansard's records. This new software will enable faster and more accurate transcription of parliamentary proceedings. This will ensure that the Hansard reports are readily available to members of Parliament in a timely fashion. Also, with the support of the Public Service Department, in St. Lucia that is, efforts are underway to digitize all of our laws and official files. The process has started, making them more accessible and efficiently managed. As we move towards an e-Parliament, members are encouraged to visit our official Facebook page, Parliament of St. Lucia, for regular updates and information from the Parliament. I take this moment now to welcome the family members of Senator Norbert, newly elected, appointed Senator Norbert, family members. So I welcome you this morning. Statements, papers to be laid. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to all our colleagues, and special good morning, bonjour, bienvenue to our newly sworn-in senators, Senator Descartes and Senator Norbert. You know, we have some history, and I can quite well appreciate his enthusiasm being here. Also acknowledge and welcome the family of Senator Norbert, who has joined him for this sitting. I also see the Leader of the Opposition has joined us. So welcome to all our guests. Madam President, you might see us, some of us decked in certain colors today, plaid, and we are still in the Creole Heritage Month under the theme Creole Se Fosnu. And so if you notice anything a little different, that's because we're in the last 2 days of the month of October, which is the official Mois Héritage Creole. Madame Président, je vais dire encore, nous en mois octobre, et puis nous allons célébrer le Mois Héritage Creole. Et puis l'année ça là, nous tenons un message qui a dit nous, Creole là c'est force nous. Et puis même si nous avons 2 jours pour aller, nous avons ici, nous avons petit plat nous avec bagaille, puis nous
nous ka célébrer moi toujours. Madam President, I also join you in sparing a thought for our compatriots in Jamaica and the other Caribbean islands up north who have been and may still be under the ravages of Hurricane Melissa. And I want to join you and the other members of our region and in all of our institutions in extending recovery greetings and our best wishes to our colleagues, particularly our students who attend universities and other colleges in these countries. I know our Minister for Education has been in touch through the Prime Minister's office to provide support for them, but I really feel for the effect that they will feel. And in one of the items on the order paper today, it will tell us, you'll see why it's important that we really, have to be resilient, have to build resilience in this country. Madam President, I just want to also mention, with your leave, that the Senator Kejiana Tousse-Shallery and myself represented this Parliament in the UK between October 14th and 16th, participated in the CPA Climate Change Forum, and that again tells you that there is a serious focus on us as a region because of our vulnerability to climate change. And we will present or provide the Senate with a summary report on our trip. But I just want to mention that I was very proud of Senator Tousse-Shallery, who sat on one of the panels and did us really proud. I was very pleased to see her, deliver and represent her sector as well as the country. So, Madam President, I think as regards other things that I would have exhausted that. So at this point, I want to beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument Number 124 of 2025, Tourism Development MCE Sounds Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 125 of 2025, Fiscal Incentives Regulatory Authority Amendment of Schedule 1 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 126 of 2025, Price Control Amendment Number 12 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 127 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 Number 12 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 128 of 2025, Immigration Waiver of Fee for Extension of Permit Order. Statutory Instrument Number 129 of 2025, Value Added Tax, Resolution of Parliament to approve Draft Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 130 of 2025, Value Added Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 2 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 131 of 2025, Tourism Development Kanawi ATV Tours Order. Statutory Instrument Number 132 of 2025, Tourism Development LCS Enterprise Order. Statutory Instrument Number 133 of 2025, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Trading International Group TIC Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument Number 134 of 2025, Income Tax Exemption Millennium Heights Medical Complex Order. Statutory Instrument Number 135 of 2025, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Fiber Investments Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 136 of 2025, Fiscal Incentives Caribbean Awning Production Company Order. Statutory Instrument Number 137 of 2025, Tourism Development Bay Gardens Limited Order. Statutory Instrument Number 138 of 2025, Legal Profession Eligibility Tizian Elizabeth Alina Rodolfo Order. Statutory Instrument Number 139 of 2025, Price Control Amendment Number 13 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 140 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, Number 13 Order. Statutory Instrument Number 141 of 2025, Youth Economy Act Commencement Order. Statutory Instrument number 142 of 2025, Price Control Amendment number 14 order. Statutory Instrument number 143 of 2025, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1 order. And Statutory Instrument number 144 of 2025, Motor Vehicles and Road Traffic Fees Amendment Regulations.
And just before I call on for motions, just to inform you, Senators, that the election will not be used today because we are experiencing some technical difficulties. I'm not sure if some of you noticed on Tuesday. So to be on the safe side, we will have to present without use of the podium. So apologies for any discomfort, but we want to go through the day very quickly, very efficiently, and so the podium will not be used during your presentations. Again, my apologies, but we want to make sure that our wires and cords and electrical bits remain intact. Thank you very much. Motions? Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I note your words of caution. I missed the lectern very much, but I will comply. Madam President, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name. Whereas under Section 1091A of the Value Added Tax Cap 1542, the Act, it is provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 1092 of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 1091 of the Act is subject to affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is to the customs tariffs headings only. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 3 order, to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years, commencing from the 2nd day of August 2025, ending on the 1st day of August 2027, the purchase or lease of an aircraft or a watercraft for local and regional travel. Be it resolved that Parliament may affirm, by affirmative resolution, approves the value-added tax amendment number 3 schedule order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import for the period of 2 years, commencing on the 2nd day of August 2025 and ending on the 1st day of August 2027, the purchase or lease of an aircraft or watercraft for local and regional travel. Madam President, this resolution seeks to basically achieve one main objective. And I can relate to the need for that to be done because of the experience, particularly that we've had from my vantage point in the tourism industry, of challenges we face with regard to regional travel and the lack of incentives for people or entities to invest in regional travel. During some of our very important events, for example, Madam President, Jazz, Carnival, even Creole Heritage, the island of Dominica just had their Dominica Creole Festival. We find there are quite a few challenges with people moving within the region. It is actually sometimes a lot easier for someone to travel to Miami than to be able to travel to the north, the islands north of the Caribbean. And it is important that we cause for there to be some kind of incentive to cause more entities and people to invest in regional travel. I think this motion in its intention is to be able to help to ease that, let's put it this way, that unfavorable situation. And given that the government has an appreciation for this investment, we believe that 2 years may not be sufficient time for persons who take advantage of the initiative, and hence the decision by the government to extend for a further 2 years the amendment of Schedule 3 of the VAT to treat the purchase of an aircraft or watercraft, because Maritime travel is an option that we think can work. If you're looking at, for example, north to Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Dominica, Express and some of those other options have created a viable opportunity or a viable option for people who may not be able to access at their convenience air travel. And so that extension is really to provide that opportunity. So, Madam President, given the context within which we are operating and the need for us to make regional travel a little bit easier and a little more accessible, the government finds it necessary to allow for that investment to be made, to be incentivized further. And therefore, we are here to make the amendment for that purpose. So I put it to the members of this chamber to approve it and to support it. I thank you.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 3 Order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years commencing from the 2nd day of August 2025 and ending on the 1st day of August 2027, the purchase or lease of an aircraft or a watercraft for local and regional travel. Senator Norbert.
Thank you. Okay. So a pleasant good morning to you, Madam President, and to you fellow senators, all St. Lucians watching at home, and my family. Thank you very much for being here and supporting me. I just want to thank God for the honor of being here to engage in discussions pertaining to the formulation of our laws here in St. Lucia. When I listen to this resolution, what comes to mind is that we're giving a VAT, a tax break, to those who can afford to invest in aeroplanes and watercraft for regional travel. Travel is important. I see travel as a form of education. The more we travel, the more we become acquainted with those that we encounter. What about those who want to invest in travel within their constituencies? What about those who may not have enough time within the next 2 years to put money together to take advantage of this? I think if the VAT is unbearable, as the government has realized, hence they're asking for this resolution to be passed, then maybe we should come together and find another way to allow for the purchase of equipment that will be used for travel to be VAT-free. I speak about inter-constituency travel because I know of the plights of the persons from my constituency in Miku North, those who live in Prale and Margaretut, and it's easier to go to
Senator Gibeon Ferdinand.
Madam President,
yes.
I stand on a point of order.
What's your point of order, Senator?
The Senator has just indicated his constituency of Miku North. I wish to remind him that this is the upper house, and no member in this house has a constituency. He may refer to his community, but I don't think he has a constituency. The constituency of Miku North is represented by the Honorable Jeremiah Norbert. So I just wish to provide that guidance for Senator Norbert.
Thank you, Senator. Please proceed.
Yes, well played. Well, thank you very much, though, for the correction through Madam President. Persons from my community, those who live in Margaretut, and it's more difficult to get a bus from Margaretut to the pharmacy in Miku than it is to get a bus all the way to Vieux Fort because of our transportation system. And there are persons who are looking to import electric vehicles, persons looking to buy some more buses to increase their fleet, to have Uber services, taxi services. And I see this as, accommodations being made for, as I said at the beginning, those who can afford to purchase an aircraft but we must always consider those who want to invest locally. That's my contribution for this resolution. I think the time should be extended, and we should also include those of us who are unable to purchase aircrafts and watercrafts. Thank you.
Senator Jean.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, before I address the motion before us, I wish to join Senator Gideon Ferdinand in welcoming the two new senators, Senator Tommy Descott and Senator Elisha Norbert, and to wish you well while we engage in meaningful debate on behalf of the people of St. Lucia. Moi vle souhaiter tout le monde en bord, moi héritage créole, nous savons nous sorti en dedans pays qui a célébré qualité en bon fête comme ça. Et nous ni pour chebe ça nous ni pour demonstrate what we are as a people and hold on to our culture so that we're not influenced by the wider world, but we have our own unique and indigenous culture. I also want to extend our deepest solidarity with the people of Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, and the other islands that have been impacted by Hurricane Melissa. I thought, Madam President, that when we had that tropical wave approaching, we took measures to reduce or prevent the impact of that tropical wave. And to think that that very tropical wave was upgraded to a Category 5 hurricane and impacted Jamaica and Haiti as well as Cuba in such a way, I thank God that we were spared the wrath of that storm. Madam President, I also wish to remind us that we are in the month of October and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I want to remind our sisters, my sisters, of the importance of doing their preventative care, especially as it relates to breast cancer. And also to commend, yes, the men as well. As we know, the prevalence is really among women. There are a few that have impacted men. But particularly to my sisters and women in general, to really take advantage of the initiatives of the Ministry of Health. We now have free mammograms and sonograms, and now I'm hearing also about biopsies, to take advantage of these initiatives because they can save lives. I am not ashamed to say that I am a 7-year breast cancer survivor, and I really want to encourage my fellow sisters to do it early, because early detection saves lives. Madam President, also I wish to extend condolences to the family of little Ricky Samuel of Bance Labrie, who lost his life in a road collision in Vieux-Fort last Saturday. Again, as a mother who lost a son, I'm always impacted by other mothers who lost children. And so it's heartening. It's really, it breaks my heart every time I hear that another mother like me has to bury a child. There's also another friend, Lucia Albert, who lost her son to a stabbing incident in London. And again, I extend condolences to Lucia and her family. Madam President, just in response to Senator Elisha Norbert, who indicated that the concessions are for people who seem to be in the upper scale and to be those who are investors. I think we need to look at the bigger picture, and that is one that we're trying to address, which is regional travel. Madam President, it costs, when I look at our fares, our travel fares, our airfares, it costs more to travel to Miami. Sorry, it costs more to travel to the region than it does to travel to Miami and some of the other northern United States region. And so it is a measure that is being sought to reduce the cost of travel, not necessarily providing concessions to investors, but to assist us as citizens of this country and the region in reducing the cost of travel. That is the bigger picture. The cost of travel, Madam President, we must understand that there are business people seeking opportunities, St. Lucian businesses seeking opportunities in the region. But the cost of traveling through the region is phenomenal. And so in seeking to address it, it is not putting money in the hands of investors, but it is really reducing the cost of purchasing the equipment, the aircraft and the seacraft to allow for a reduced cost of service, which will benefit us. So we have to look at that bigger picture. Also, Madam President, I hear the call for inter-constituency travel. I never thought of it that way, but I heard it today. And that inter-constituency travel, I want to remind us in the Senate, there are already concessions granted to taxi drivers. As long as you are a registered taxi driver, you get concessions. There are also waivers of route permits that have been granted to minibus drivers over the years. So the government has already been addressing inter-constituency travel. The other item is electric vehicles. May I advise the member that electric vehicles do not attract import duties. So, Madam President, when we come here to speak on behalf of the people of St. Lucia, we must do our research to ensure that we give them correct information, not misinformation. So the government is already providing support through these concessions to the traveling public. Now, if you tell me that the government should provide concessions to all motorists, that's it's for another show. But Madam President, where do we stop? Do we want to bagay? Can the government afford to provide every single thing that is required? So, Madam President, we need to focus on the initiatives that the government has been providing. We need to focus on the benefits that accrue to the people of St. Lucia and to the region, especially as it relates to this motion, which would grant VAT exemption for the purchase of aircraft and seacraft. That's all they're trying to do, and it is lengthened because I suspect, Madam President, that no one has grabbed onto these opportunities just yet in order to alleviate or address the situation which is beforehand. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, my apologies. Senator Descartes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It's indeed a pleasure to be here to be in the Senate and to represent the people of St. Lucia in the upper chamber. I too want to recognize International Creole Day, Wevle Di Tout Moun Bon Moi Creole. And I want to also stand in solidarity with the persons in Jamaica who have encountered what is a very, very devastating Category 5 hurricane. I, in my previous capacity, worked on Jamaica, and I understand the economy in Jamaica. I understand that they have done tremendous work in terms of bringing down their debt, ensuring that their fiscal and disaster risk financing framework is in shape. And I have all confidence that the Jamaica government will restore its country. I know that the multilateral agencies have started to provide some support in that regard, and I want to stand in solidarity with them. I certainly want to thank the Lord for his strength and for me being here today, and I also want to recognize my mom, who's not here, but just to publicly recognize her. I am what I am today because of this great woman who has nurtured me into the man that I am today. The resolution here, in my experience, when we had COVID, when Leah went belly up, then I realized how important Leah and regional travel was to our integration movement. And so I certainly support any attempt to make regional travel a lot easier and to move goods, move people across the region. To my colleague's point about inter-community, I think it's my colleague here, the leader of government business syndicate, is not constituency, it's community. Yeah. I hear Senator Zha's point that the government are given a number of incentives, and rightly so. But there are communities, I believe, that are underserved. If you look at, I would say, ancillary canneries in particular, you would see by the time it's 5 o'clock, there are no public transportation available in these areas. And I have always felt that part of the reason that ancillary canneries and that Western Belt has been known to have perhaps the highest rates of poverty, and I know the minister and the member of parliament takes umbrage when you say that, it's because of that lack of connectivity, access to the city. So I also believe that this is a market failure that the governments also need to look at to ensure that constituencies that are underserved, that you look at incentives to ensure that you provide connectivity to these constituencies, these communities, Madam President. And so while I appreciate the incentives that are there, I think the government needs to look a bit further to look at communities that are underserved and how you can incentivize more persons to get into the public transportation sector in these particular areas, because it then has a natural impact on the poverty in these areas, and it gives persons access to the economic centers of castries and groceries. So I just wanted to draw that to the attention of the Senator, and thank you very much.
Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to thank the senators who added to the conversation with regard to this motion. I'm happy to say that there's not much that I will need to respond to, because I think Senator Jean adequately addressed the issues that were raised by colleague Senator Elisha Norbert with regard to the incentives for taxi, we call them hybrid, but climate smart vehicles, transportation, domestic travel, and the concept of trying to reduce the cost of travel. This is the whole objective. So I think that has been adequately addressed. I want to just speak to one observation based on the short presentation made by Senator Descat. It was heartening to hear Senator Descat say today in this chamber, and I want to say to my colleagues in this chamber, especially our new senators, once you put yourself up for public office, you will have to face certain questions, and you will have to have some thick skin, because sometimes your utterances and your position will call for a response. So I want to just say to my colleagues, welcome to this chamber, but you will not be allowed to get away with anything that we believe you have to take accountability and responsibility for. And so in the best and diplomatic way, I want to pay attention to one issue that Senator Descat raised. I am sure all of us in this chamber heard him say that in his experience, he recognized the importance of LIAT to regional travel. And when we quote-unquote lost LIAT, what it meant to us. You know, that is very instructive, Madam President, because I would like to think that at the time, he also ought to have noted the position that his Prime Minister, his government, took on LIAT. And I remembered, I was then in opposition in the Senate, and I remembered over and over that we cautioned and we pleaded with the government to give support to the LIAT cause. I remembered his then Prime Minister saying that it's not profitable. We should not be contributing to keep LIAT operating. Once it's not making money, we should shut it down. And eventually, countries in the region, Antigua, some of our neighboring islands in the OECS, were carrying the burden because the St. Lucian, from St. Lucia, because of the position of his leader, we were not able to keep our commitment, and, well, we chose not to, didn't we? We chose not to. And MRGs and all of that, yes. But I think today, this situation, our position is vindicated. It's vindicated. Because I am listening to a member of the United Workers' Party hierarchy, a senator appointed by the leader of the opposition, come to this chamber, Madam President, nous on dit dans moi héritage créole. Bodier qui voit ça ou ça. Bodier voit chopa wol ça vinicia. Puisqu'il était allé en moun partisan en flambeau dit ça. And it is good that we're hearing it in a very eloquent tone by Senator Descat. So I want to thank him for saying it out loud so his leader can reflect on some of the decisions that he had made that contributed to the position that the region is in. And we'll get back to that later because there are other motions to come, where in his presentation, acknowledging what the loss of LIAT did to not only us, but to the region. So, Madam President, out of everything that happened in this conversation, I think this was the most profound point and argument that was made. So I want to thank Senator Descat once again. And I want to tell him that he needs to continue to give his leader the advice that he just gave all of us today. That these reckless positions and decisions, they must stop taking them. And that is why, unfortunately, he has found himself on that side. So I want again, Madam President, to reiterate that this motion was really intended to reduce the cost of the investments in air and maritime travel, and also to try to make the cost of regional travel a lot cheaper. I thank senators for their contribution, and I look forward to the benefit of that amendment and resolution to the people of St. Lucia and to the people of the region. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 3 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import for a period of 2 years commencing on the 2nd day of August 2025 and ending on the 1st day of August 2027, the purchase or lease of an aircraft or a watercraft for local and regional travel. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name. Whereas under Section 1091 of the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 1542, the Act, it is provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 1092 of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 1091 of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is to the customs tariffs headings only. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value added tax amendment of Schedule 3, number 5, order to amend Section 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include as an exempt import the import of one Caterpillar D6T XLDS track type tractor and one TUF cut portable diesel 23 HP Isuzu by the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority. Be it resolved that Parliament by affirmative resolution approves the draft value added tax amendment of Schedule 3 order, number 5 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import, the import of one Caterpillar D60 XLDS track type tractor and one TUF cut portable diesel 23 HP Isuzu by the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority. Madam President, what this amendment is seeking to do, or this resolution is seeking to do, is having recognized that the Solid Waste Management Authority, which is, by the way, owned by the government of St. Lucia, has the benefit of receiving an annual subvention from the government, and the amount is $11.3 million. The Solid Waste Management Authority is desirous of improving its operational efficiency and the security of the two pieces of equipment that we're mentioning here. And as we know, Madam President, the disposal of waste is not a private sector activity, and it limits the revenue that is generated from this activity. So hence, the authority has to procure this equipment that is significantly expensive and also pay the VAT. So essentially, the government is charging itself. So what this is seeking to do is to amend the Value Added Tax Act 1452, which will amend item number 5. And so what it would do, Madam President, is it will work towards monitoring the price of movement of these selected goods to ensure that the price developments going forward will be consistent with the stated policy and objectives of the beneficiaries. So, Madam President, that is the basic intention of that amendment, and I ask members for their support in that regard.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, number 5, order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import the import of one Caterpillar D6T XL DS track type tractor and one TUF cut portable diesel 23 HP Isuzu by the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority. Senator Norbert.
Thank you, Madam President. Just as I did a while ago, I would like to say that this resolution seeks relief for the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority, owned by the government of St. Lucia. The government of St. Lucia is seeking relief from VAT, just as those who wish to buy aircrafts, those who wish to get tractors for the department, they were seeking some relief. si vat lak atchwe nou, vat lak atchwe nou. Ek nou pou try gade pou manye pou nou bay pli moun relief. Ek se sa mwen de ka dit ale ala, pli moun sa benefit from se resolution sa la. And so, persons who wish to import special equipment to move around their homes, move around their farms, they should be offered similar privileges. And to the leader of government business, if Solid Waste wants to order next year, my question is, do we have to come back for another resolution? Can we pass a law where the government does not have to charge itself at all? You know, I'm here to ask questions and to learn, so we understand why we have to come here every time such a request is made. So something that will benefit more people and something that will prevent us from returning to this house for such matters would be more efficient, more effective in giving us the relief that we all need from VAT. Also, I wanted to add that customs duties, import duties, VAT, they're all separate and different charges. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to join the sentiments that have been expressed this morning. First of all, welcoming our two new colleague senators. I hope that they find the experience here edifying and contributes to the development generally. Also, I want to take time in joining you in expressing our sympathies to the persons or the people of Jamaica, the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, but particularly the persons in Jamaica who have been, devastated by Hurricane Melissa. And I'm sure in the coming days we will be given the opportunity to assist. And I call on all St. Lucians, when an effort or you're reached out to, that we assist as much as we can, because we never know when the shoe might be on the other foot. I'm just seeking a little bit of latitude, Madam President, because when I read through the resolution, I wasn't sure exactly what the TUF portable cut diesel machine was. So I Googled it and I realized that it's supposed to be a portable tire shredder, I believe, or tire cutter, which then got me thinking that I heard the leader of government business saying that, the solid waste authority is trying to improve their capacity. And that is all well and good, and their efficiency, that is all well and good, but we are, I believe, Madam President, in a rather small, fragile and vulnerable country. And yes, whereas we have to deal with the waste when it's created, I think we need to, as much as possible, look at means of reducing the waste in the first place. The landfill, I'm sure we had a fire there not too long ago, is coming under increased stress in terms of its capacity, and we do need to look at perhaps what is going to be the next step. It's not going to exist forever. It can't meet our needs forever. And so in addition to these obviously urgent and necessary actions, I would just like to flag it so that we start giving some serious consideration as to what's next. Are we able to proceed or pursue recycling in any serious manner? If not, what do we do? How do we reduce the amount of waste that we are generating and we continue to generate? Sadly, we are in an economy and a society, I should say, that encourages consumption and encourages disposable consumption, which leads, unfortunately, to the production of more and more waste, more and more garbage that we have to find something to do with. So I just wanted to flag that as a concern when I saw the resolution, which I support, but I think we do need to take things a little further and start looking at what are we going to do next in terms of meeting or dealing with our trash and garbage waste issues. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Ferdinand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Again, I thank the senators who contributed to the conversation. I just want to reiterate the intention there was to make the Solid Waste Management Authority more efficient. And I accept that there are concerns with regard to garbage disposal and the specialized equipment that Senator Norbert mentioned. Yes, we actually do have incentives provided for people bringing in specialized equipment under the Ministry of Persons with Disabilities, for example. When there is specialized equipment brought in, the duties and the various charges are removed, and specialized vehicles as well. So that is in effect. But to say that we will come back, this is what this chamber is for. There are times that there are circumstances that cause us to have to come here and make changes. But more specifically, I agree with Senator Lee with regard to the stress that is placed on the Deglo landfill. But Madam President, I'll just take 2 minutes to just do a little bit of a history lesson here. Again, we must never forget how we got where we got. You see, some people want us to forget that quickly. We must not. Because the decisions we make and the policy positions we take as a government, whether it is this government or anyone before that this government or any future government, will have implications for people down the road. So how did we get to a point, Madam President, where we have to come here today to deal with this? I just want to juggle a memory of the opposition to a few years ago, sometime between 2016 and 2021, when a certain Minister for Sustainable Development sat somewhere here, and under the leadership and policy of her government, a decision was made to truck. Okay, first of all, you remember the story of the incinerators, Madam President? I don't know if anybody here remembers that. The incinerators, remember that?
They have not worked.
That I still don't know where they are and if they ever worked.
They have not.
So we have a garbage disposal site in Vieux-Fort on the Larry Shoes, on the main road, close to the hospital. Because of some pie-in-the-sky investment, the landfill was deemed to be a threat to that investment. And so the government then, that these two gentlemen, that I have a lot of regard for, have decided that they want to follow and be part of, decided on its own to decommission the site. And you know what is instructive, Madam President? Up to this day, and we are stuck in this, we have to try to find taxpayers' money to deal with it. This is costing the government $70,000 a month to truck garbage from Vieux-Fort to Deglo. On mornings when I drive to work, Madam President, sometimes I have to be driving behind a container truck with a stench, flies, all the way from Miku, coming from my area in Miku Deriso, all the way to Castries, sometimes through the Badlil, because somebody was very bright and thought it was a good idea to truck garbage away from the site in Vieux-Fort to Deglo. So what has happened? Deglo has become overwhelmed, and we have problems now with the residents, we have problems, and now look what we have to come and do. And then they come here, you know, genuflecting, yeah? After you do, from my fault, from my own grievous fault, Madam President. So this, I want to just remind the opposition that the position we are in today, it was because of policies made, or policies taken or decisions made by the government that they seek to represent, that has landed us here. And so, Madam President, I hope that they continue to genuflect and what's the word you use after you do confession? Absolution. Madam President, when il y a qui opposition qui continue point absolution et 17 lycéens pardon pour toutes ces vieilles décisions qu'ils ont fait. Ils allaient pour commencer à faire ça. 17 lycéens. Donc bon moi pas blâmer des gentilshommes ici là. You know, they have just entered. But I want to say you are guilty by association. That's right. You made a choice. And so, Madam President, I think that was essentially my contribution, and I hope the opposition takes it.
Oh.
I thank you, Madam President.
No, it doesn't coincide. I can't.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 5 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to include as an exempt import the import of one Caterpillar D6T XL DS track type tractor and one TUF cut portable diesel 23 HP Isuzu by the St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name. Whereas under Section 1091A of the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 1542, the Act, it is provided that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules of the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 1092 of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 1091 of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is to the customs tariffs headings only. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4, order to amend Schedule 3. Yeah, it says Schedule 3, Number 4. Just checking, madam. Good? Okay. So, yeah, just to continue. So I'll go back to the third paragraph. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 order to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to A, exempt imports of personal items, food, clothing, toys, and other household consumables contained in barrels for the period commencing from the 15th day of October 2025 and terminating on the 20th day of February 2026. B, exempt imports of toys, food supplies, care packages, Christmas lights, and Christmas decorations by elected parliamentarians. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approve the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act to A, exempt imports of personal items, food, clothing, toys, and other household consumables contained in barrels for the period commencing from the 15th day of October 2025 and terminating on the 20th day of February 2026. B, exempt toys, import of toys, food supplies, care packages, Christmas lights, and Christmas decorations by elected parliamentarians. Madam President, this exemption and amendment we have come here annually to do, And the sole purpose of this is to facilitate the importation by elected members, not us. I'd love you to be able to do that. Mais je ne pas électé, Madame President, so ça pas pour moi. But for elected parliamentarians to be able to get those items, you know, this is the festive season, and the government, as is customary, is creating that facility for them to be able to do so on behalf of their constituents. And so I put this again for the support, for what's intended for the support of the colleagues in the Senate.
Senator Descartes.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Just
Thank
one
you.
second. Just let me pose the question. Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act 2A, exempt imports of personal items, food, clothing, toys, and other household consumables contained in barrels for the period commencing from the 15th day of October 2025 and terminating on the 28th day of February 2026. B. Exempt imports of toys, food supplies, care packages, Christmas lights, and Christmas decorations by elected parliamentarians. Now, Senator Descartes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This resolution, Madam President, I have no issues with it, but to see that we're all aware of the challenges at SLASPA and the bottlenecks that and the challenges people face in clearing their barrels at that particular institution. And Madam President, while someone may import a barrel at such and such a time, we have heard of stories of these barrels being there for inordinate amounts of time. And that literally exacerbates the experience and exacerbates and amplifies the inflationary impact. And so, while I support the resolution, I think there must, with a level of urgency and alacrity, that we ensure that we resolve the challenges that has been encountered at the SLASPA currently. You will constantly see a backlog of containerized trucks around the Fuwasho area there. There is a growing concern about how SLASPA's operations is literally amplifying and exacerbating the inflation within this economy. And so I think in tandem with this policy, there must be consideration to how are we going to reduce these bottlenecks that we see at SLASPA. There's been a lot of discussion around persons who I meet on a day-to-day basis who complain that there's a lot of inefficiency at this institution. An institution that at once was perhaps the best run port authority within the OECS. Sad to say, we are now having to question the efficiency of this institution. And so, Madam President, I would like to see that along with these exemptions, which I think are well deserved, to sort of give persons relief. And we know the challenges that persons are facing at the groceries when you go through the various supermarkets. A government that has tried to resolve the inflation challenges by exempting or zero rating 70 items or so. And when we did our research, we found out, Madam President, 25 of them were already zero rated. So essentially, it's 45 thereabout. And we know that there are other resolutions coming in, and it's about tinkering around the issue, tinkering with the issues.
Senator Jean.
Madam President, I stand on a point of order. Senator Descartes indicated that of the 70 items that were already zero rated, 20-something of them were already done. Madam President, 25 Madam President, this is misleading. These 25 items were VAT exempt, and there is, Madam President, a clear distinction between exempt items and zero-rated items. So, Madam President, I would ask Senator Descartes to retrace that statement.
Senator Descartes, Senator Jean has indicated that you've misled with your information, as there is a difference between zero-rated and VAT exempt. So please respond if you wish to withdraw or correct your statement.
Well, I am certain that I understand what a zero-rated item is and an exempt item is. I may have used them interchangeably, but the fundamental issue is that of 25 of these items were zero-rated, already zero-rated, Senator Jean. And so in a true, it's really 45 items that really you would have seen the adjustments in these prices. If you, it's 45 and not 25, not 70, Madam President. But that being said, I wish to draw to the point.
Senator Jean.
Madam President, again, Senator Descartes is reiterating his point and not correcting his statement. An exempt item is not the same as a zero-rated item. The mechanism for dealing with the VAT on these two items is different, and therefore one benefits more from a zero-rated item than an exempt item. So Madam President, Senator Descartes needs to correct his statement because it is misleading to the people of St. Lucia. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Descartes, you did indicate that your mic off. You were using it interchangeably. What I would advise you to please clearly state what you mean, so it can be corrected.
Thank you, Madam President. Like I said earlier, I use the terminology interchangeably, and that I accept that I'm.
Well, do you mind stating correctly what you meant all along? So, for the record.
For the record, of the 70 items that were exempt, 25 were already zero-rated. Or is the other way around? Okay. So, but what I do know is, fundamentally, the issue she's saying that a zero-rated item does not, you cannot request a VAT returns. For the exempt items, you can. That's the fundamental difference. So I don't think that a zero-rated item, because you can claim for exempt and not zero-rated items. All right, I stand corrected.
Madam President.
Senator Jean.
Yeah, Madam President, Senator Descartes has his information swapped. So for a zero-rated item, one can claim the VAT. So your business person, your merchant, stands to benefit, and that can pass on to the customer. For an exempt item, they can't recover the VAT, and therefore they stand to lose. So, Madam President, I just wanted to assist Senator Descartes in that regard. But, Madam President, the bigger picture is that the government allowed for zero rating of 70 items, and therefore the people of St. Lucia will benefit from the reduction or the removal of VAT from these 70 items. I don't think we should reduce it to the 45, Madam President. That's the bigger issue.
Senator Descartes. Before I come to you, Senator Norbert, since Senator Jean has said it clearly, do you accept this is what you meant to say?
Yes, I would like to say that this is what I meant to say. Oftentimes you tend to mix up these terminologies, but certainly I too have had challenges in what is the difference and what is the real benefit of a zero-rated item versus an exempt item. I understand that it deals with the cash flow issue that for whoever the merchant is. I have asked myself, why should we, for example, I've seen use zero-rate mangoes and these sort of or you exempt mangoes and these sort of items because there's no because VAT is applied at different stages. So I accept the correction, Madam President, but fundamentally I want to go back to the point that while this relief is good, the issue at SLASP, I think, is a fundamental issue that we need to deal with, Madam President. Thank you.
Senator Norbert.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't wish to sound like a broken record, but on page 2 of this resolution, we have an exempt for toys, food supplies, care packages, Christmas lights, Christmas decorations by elected parliamentarians. So, again, if the VAT is too much for the elected parliamentarians to pay, it's too much for me, the layman. Is the leader of the opposition, the leader of government business said it's for elected parliamentarians, not for us. So I would like clarification. Not for members of this chamber, but the layman will get. But the layman will get it. So I would like clarification on that section here, because I would love to believe that everyone.
Senator Ferdinand.
Madam President, I just wish to ask whether I'm standing on a point of order. And my point of order is I do not know whether Senator Norbert is standing on a point of elucidation, and if he is, then you may, with your permission. Well, he did ask me a question, so I was wondering whether he was asking for a response.
Well, this is where I was coming to. I wanted to know whether it was to be dealt with during your rebuttal, or are you throwing out the question through me to the senator right now? So, Senator Norbert, you are throwing out your question as part of your presentation, or do you want the senator to stand and respond to you immediately? Whatever works. So I will allow you to respond during your rebuttal, okay? So take your notes, Senator Ferdinand, and you shall respond during that time. Please proceed, Senator Norbert.
Yes, but apart from that, I support the resolution. Of course, these things benefit the people of St. Lucia, and I just want some more clarification on that to ensure it's equality for all in this country. Thank you.
Senator Toussaint Shalry.
Thank you, Madam President. Et puis bonjour tout sénateur, bonjour tout cette Lucia qui a écouté nous aujourd'hui. Madam President, I just wish to make a short intervention. I think the resolution before us is one that we have and St. Lucians have come to understand as part of something that has happened for many, many years in this parliament during that time. And it's always very, I'm not even sure what's the adjective to use here, that this resolution actually normally garners a debate, in the sense that to me it has become so cliche and so expected and so commonplace. However, I think I just want to touch on two things that Senator Norbert indicated during his presentation. One is that this is the third item that we're looking at this morning, and I noticed that Senator Norbert continues to hit on the issue of VAT, indicating, and I'm trying to basically in my own words, what he has been saying, that if the VAT seems to be a problem or a sore point for Senator Norbert, and with the indication that, well, if it's too much, let's take it out. My question, though, is, and not necessarily a question that I wish Senator Norbert to respond to immediately, but perhaps food for thought for also those who are out there listening. The question of how does a government raise revenue? I mean, how do we support public transportation that I know is very dear to Senator Norbert? How do we support healthcare? How do we support education? We speak of increased scholarships and we speak of assistance for early childhood education, and we speak of payment of facilities fee and payment of CXCs. Where does government garner resources and revenue in order to do these things? It must come from a source, and one of these sources is a tax regime. But also, if we look at the tax rates even around the region, Madam President, at 12.5% and even at 15% where VAT started in St. Lucia, we are not amongst the countries or the islands with the highest tax rate. And so whereas I understand every cent, every half cent, every percentage that's added to anything, I understand even when you can afford it, you feel it's more than you paid yesterday, and so it's too much. But we really have to have the conversation and get into the consciousness of our people that taxes are one of the ways that governments collect revenue. And I think that we have exhausted the conversation that VAT is one of the taxes that is more evenly distributed, that is more easily collected, and so on. And so I just wanted to make sure that that the persons listening also understand the other side of that argument, Madam President. Also, he noted, Senator Norbert, that is, noted that based on what I understand, he seems to be of the understanding that the resolution simply seeks to reduce the duties for parliamentarians. But I think in the presentation of the resolution, there were two parts. One, where it says the exempt imports of personal items, food, clothing, toys, and other household consumables contained in barrels for the said period. And then the part B speaks to exempt imports of toys, food supplies, care packages, Christmas lights, and Christmas decorations by elected parliamentarians. So it's a two-part under the resolution. In one part, the parliamentarians get to bring the items in so that they can also provide for their constituents. Because it's an understanding, I think, c'est pas tout le monde qui sa pack un barrel, c'est pas tout le monde qui ni moun l'autre pays pour sa mener un barrel bayo, mais de les parliamentary rep la même, sa ni yon te de ti bagay, sa bay an ti mamay, an ti popot, sa bay an moun an ti liv sik an bagay, i porte de san an di dan an barrel, sa distribute a constituency. So I just wanted to make that clarification, Madam President, and as I end to say that I support the resolution before the House. Thank you.
Senator Prosper, Antoine Prosper.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I make my short contribution, I would like to join my fellow senators in welcoming Senator Descartes and Senator Norbert to the chambers. Welcome. I would also like to join in wishing all St. Lucians born fête créole yesterday, avant yesterday jour créole international avec nous c'est Jean Créole avec moi voulais faire tout gens cette ici savent nous ni pour continuer chebe créole la wed. Madam President, every year for the past few years, government allows citizens of St. Lucia to import household goods, food items. As you know, we are a country that celebrates Christmas. And so the government always wants the people of St. Lucia to have a Merry Christmas. That's how we say it. And so this is an incentive for the people of St. Lucia because we have relatives in the diaspora who export barrels out of the country into St. Lucia for relatives, for their children, those who live overseas. And so this is a time to give that relief to the people of St. Lucia in the form of a barrel that they get at a reduced, if I have to say it, at a reduced price. They don't pay the normal price cost of the barrel for the goods. So there's a specific rate that is given, a reduced rate. And so I am thinking, Madam President, this would be a welcoming initiative for all of us. Parce que même si moi ka travail, moi ka bien content si c'est moi ka voyer un barrel ban moi pour Noël avec mani pour payer, j'ai moi ni maman pour soin. Avec misi moun Saint Lucie content ça. Avec yo ka espérer laisser là bon Noël pour yo sa trouver barrel yo savent yo pas ni pour payer on chay l'argent pour lui. Avec c'est pour ça nous ici aujourd'hui ça pas un bail qui neuf. Ça pas un bail qui neuf pièce tout bonnement. Avec ça son bail actuellement moi te kakatile toute cette ici connaître bon Noël avec l'année ça bail la plus belle. Gouvernement commencé en octobre et puis jusqu'en février. So l'année octobre, novembre, décembre, janvier, 5 mois. Côté c'est moun ça, oui s'ouvert barrel yo avec pour yo passer à payer on chay pour lui. Comme ça, moi voulais complimenter le gouvernement pour qu'à continuer faire ça. Avec quand c'est nous sénateur d'Italie, nous c'est ministre gouvernement, c'est gens qui électés. Nous savons ces gens qui ka bail moun les Noël. Avec sous électé un gouvernement ou quoi comprendre ça. Parce que nous n'y pouvons aider maman là, nous n'y pouvons aider grand monde, nous n'y pouvons aider différents monde. Comme ça, c'est membres qui électé un gouvernement. Gouvernement ka bay au privilège ça là pour mener barrel en tout et puis bay pour bay moun, c'est pas vendre ou ka vendre ni. So c'est pour ça gouvernement pas ka fait yo payer VAT parce que c'est pas bay pour yo vendre. C'est bay pour yo bay citoyen, c'est bay pour yo bay gens constituency yo. Comme ça yo ka acheter mais yo ça mener en tout sans payer VAT là. C'est pour ça moi ici à madame président pour supporter initiative ça gouvernement a fait. Merci.
Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to the colleagues. I didn't anticipate that amount of time on this particular motion, but it happened. Couple of observations. I think I'll start with Senator Norbert's question. I think Senator Antoine has responded in part to it. He was asking whether the exemption is for elected parliamentarians only and not for us. When I said us, I meant not for senators. And he also has been stressing, well, if the VAT is too much for this one, what about the rest? The intention here is to make these exemptions not for anybody to import and get exemptions for themselves. The intention, the reason the exemption is being given is with the understanding that whatever items that the elected parliamentarian is importing or bringing in is for the constituents in their constituency and for the people of St. Lucia. So invariably, that is supposed to benefit the average St. Lucian who will be receiving the assistance from the parliamentary rep. And I want to say also, we have the confidence that our parliamentary representatives are not practicing a particular doctrine, so that it is not going to be only certain people who will benefit. Every St. Lucian child and family who is a constituent, we have a basic principle that they are expected to benefit from this. So in all the 17 constituencies, including the opposition constituencies, the parliamentary rep has the option of utilizing this for the benefit of the constituencies. So people here who are senators, who are not parliamentary reps, we do not have that privilege. But we who are individuals, if we have family members who the parliamentary representatives wish to assist, they will also benefit. So I hope I have cleared that. But Madam President, just one more thing. Moi pas pièce économiste. Tout le monde sait, moi c'était un teacher à l'école, moi c'était un sports administrator, community man. Moi pas jamais à l'école pour y faire économique, so moi pas ça do rien about economics. Mais moi je comprends des petits bagailles. Et puis moi ça nous ni un mon ici qui c'était un chief économiste, ça vrai? Est-ce vrai? Moi quoi? Bon, tout à l'heure la dernière conversation qui allait là concernait VAT exempt, exonerated. Et ils sont nous ni deux chief économistes ici. Parce que ils sont sénateurs Jean sur ma pipi économiste, parce que c'est lui qui a mené, qui a mis clarté en affaires VAT exempt, exonerated. Merci sénateur Jean pour mettre clarté à tout ça. Puis moi-même papier économiste et puis moi réaliser qui nous avons fait un chai monde qui apprend un chai bagaille. Bon sénateur Descartes moi voulais dire moi apprécié il fait une contribution là, mais moi aussi pour les by VAT exempt exonerated ça te former les mélanges. So Madam President, one other issue that was raised was the issue of the congestion of the ports at Slasper. I think Senator Descartes raised that. And I am pleased to inform the Senate that this is one of the reasons why we're doing the port development. As we speak, the opposition is hitting on that port development, you know, as if it's the worst thing that ever happened in this country. But I want to tell this country that the port development that we're doing now, one of the objectives is to be able to do just that. Because we do recognize that there are limitations at the port. That is true. And the intention is also to be able to divert some of the cargo services away from port cacheries into cul-de-sac. And that will cause more of the focus on cruise and these arrivals in port cacheries, while more of the cargo will be diverted away from the port. So I am pleased to inform the Senate that what we are doing is strategic. We understand the challenge, and Senator Descartes' concern will be addressed in part by what is happening in the port development, and hopefully with the movement away from port cacheries to the cargo in cul-de-sac. So given that, Madam President, I thank members and I look forward to the benefits of the people of St. Lucia from these exemptions on these ballots.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approve the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 3, Number 4 Order, which amends Schedule 3 of the Act 2A, exempt imports of personal items, food, clothing, toys, and other household consumables contained in barrels for the period commencing from the 15th day of October 2025 and terminating on the 20th day of February 2026. And B, exempt imports of toys, food supplies, care packages, Christmas lights, and Christmas decorations by elected parliamentarians. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name. And please bear with me, my voice is not the best today, so if it fades a little as we go during the day, please bear with me. I will, but I'll do so. So once it becomes necessary, I will beg your leave to allow perhaps one of my colleagues to. Madam President, I beg to lay the following paper standing in my name. Whereas under Section 17 of the Health and Citizen Security Levy, Act Cap 1544, the Act, it is provided that the Minister of Finance, with the approval of Cabinet, may, by order published in the Gazette, amend Section 3 of the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 17 of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 17 of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks approval of the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, amendment of Schedule 3, order to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include the following 2022 harmonized commodity description and coding system codes and corresponding descriptions for the goods listed in Item 2 of Part 1. And Madam President, there's a list of goods, and I must ask for pardon in advance because some of those terms are very technical and sophisticated. So I'll do my best to pronounce them. My phonetic skills as a teacher, I hope, will come in there. So, Madam President, as follows: 4403.11.00 coniferous, 4403.12.00 non-coniferous, 4403.99.00 other, 4407.11.10 pitch pine, 4407.11.20 Caribbean cedar, Cedria adorata, 44.12.33.00 other with at least one outer ply of non-coniferous wood of the species alder, Alnus spp, ash, Fraxnetus spp, beech, Fagus spp, birch, Betula spp, cherry, Prunus spp, chestnut, Castanea spp, elm, Ulmus spp, Eucalyptus spp, hickory, Coria spp, horse chestnut, Esculus, looks like Greek there, Esculus spp, lime, Tilia spp, maple, Acer spp, oak, Quercus spp, plane tree, Platanus spp, poplar and aspen, poplar spp, robina spp, chilipwood, Liriodendron, apps spp or walnut, Juglus spp. Okay, madam, I'm surviving. So 4418.92.00 cellular wood panels, 4421.99.10 spool capped bobbins, sewing threads, reels, and the like, or turnwood. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft Health and Security Levy Act amendment of Schedule 3. Order to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include the following 2022 harmonized commodity description and coding systems, codes, and corresponding descriptions for the goods listed in Item 2 of Part 1. Now, Madam President, if you can permit me to say that the following goods are as I just read, to save me
permission granted, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. And so I put this just to say that this is basically asking for the similar exemption for these particular items listed. These are specific items. Most of them are wood-based, I think, for the purposes that were stated. So I ask that the Senate give support for the request under the Health and Security Levy that is being requested in this resolution. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, amendment of Schedule 3 order to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to include the following 2022 harmonized commodity description and coding system codes and corresponding descriptions for the goods listed in Item 2 of Part 1. And like Senator Gibeon, I shall have a go at this. 4403.11.0 coniferous, 4403.12.00 non-coniferous, 4403.99.00 other, 4407.11.10 pitch pine, 4407.11.20 Caribbean cedar, Cedria adorata, 4412.33.00 other, with at least one outer ply of non-coniferous wood of the species Alder, Alnus spp, Ash, Fraxinus spp, Beech, Fagus spp, Birch, Betula spp, Cherry, Prunus spp, Chestnut, Castagna spp, Elm, Ulmus spp, Eucalyptus, Eucalyptus spp, Hickory, Kaya spp, Horse Chestnut, Esculus spp, Lime, Tilia spp, Maple, Axa spp, Oak, Quercus spp, Plane Tree, Platanus spp, Poplar and Aspen Populus spp, Robina spp, Tulip Wood, Liriodendron spp, or Walnut Juglans spp. 4418.92.00 cellular wood panels, 4421.99.10 spools, caps, bobbins, sewing thread reels, and the like, or turned wood. Senator Norbert.
Yes, Madam President, I just rise to commend the move to have this harmonized commodity description coding system. And I was also excited to hear of the move to introduce some 21st century text-to-speech and speech-to-text technology in the House. And I hope that moving forward, we implement more strategies to increase efficiency in our procedures here. Thank you.
I now pose Senator Ferdinand.
Thank you, Madam President. Just want to thank members. It appears that they have given their approval to this, and so I thank them and hope that it serves the purpose for which it is intended.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approve the draft Health and Citizen Security Levy Act, amendment of Schedule 3 order to amend Schedule 3 of the Act by affirmative resolution of Parliament to include the following 2022 harmonized commodity description and the coding system codes and corresponding descriptions for the goods listed in Item 2 of Part 1. I will just call out the codes. 4403.110.00, 4403.12.00, 4403.99.00, 4407.11.10, 4407.11.20, 4412.33.00, 4418.92.00, 4421.99.10. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to lay the following motion standing in my name. Whereas under Section 1091A of the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 1542, the Act, it is provided by the Minister of Finance that the Minister of Finance may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedules to the Act. And whereas it is further provided under Section 1092 of the Act that an order made pursuant to Section 1091 of the Act is subject to an affirmative resolution of Parliament, except where the amendment is to the customs tariff headings only. And whereas the Minister of Finance seeks the approval of the draft value-added tax amendments, Schedules 1 and 3 order, to amend Schedules 1 and 3 of the Act by an affirmative resolution of Parliament to A, in the case of Schedule 1, in Item 2.1, to include a zero-rated goods, a supply of goods under the following customs tariffs headings: 04-069-000200, other cheddar cheese in packages of 2.5 kilograms and more, 1507-9000-200, other soybean oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, 1511909-0200, other palm oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, 15121-900-200, other sunflower oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, 151529-00-200, other maize corn oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, 1515-909-0200, other vegetable oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, 15171000-2200, margarine shelf in containers 40 grams or less, 1505-901-0100, biscuit unsweetened in packages of a content more than 5 ounces. And I want to note the unsweetened because I want to speak to that after, Madam President. 2, in the Item 2.2, to include a zero-rated supply of services, the supply of contracting services to the government with respect to Component 1 of the Renewable Energy Sector Development Project. B, in the case of Schedule 3, to include as an exempt import the imports of goods for Component 1 of the Renewable Energy Sector Development Project. Be it resolved that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedule 1 and 3 order, which amends Schedule 1 and 3 of the Act in the case of Schedule 1. And, Madam President, with your permission, it repeats the very same products that I listed in the first instance. And so, Madam President, just to emphasize the purpose of this resolution, I think it may, to some extent, speak directly to some of the issues that have been raised in the previous conversations, and that is to remove, to zero it, and to make it less costly for St. Lucians for some of these food items. And if you note, Madam President, with the numbers and the items listed, most of them are in the smaller quantities. So you would notice that a lot of them say 7 milliliters, 750 milliliters or less. So it is not targeted at the big man and the big people that Senator Norbert refers to. It is targeted at the people who can afford the smaller container. C'est moun la qui sa acheté, you passe acheter un gros bouteille l'huile, you passe acheter un gros bloc cheese, you can acheter plus petit morceau, et bien you can acheter un petit bouteille parce que you pas ni un chay large. So it is targeting the products in smaller quantities in most cases. And also, Madam President, I made note of on the commodity of biscuits where it says unsweetened. And that speaks to something that we should encourage in this country. the consumption of sugar, especially granulated sugar. A lot of the items that we consume, they contribute to the non-communicable diseases that we have, and I'm happy to see that it specifically says unsweetened packages. So, Madam President, and it also speaks to the renewable energy sector, again, very consistent with our climate resilient and climate change policies. So this is not just saying, look, we want to make random things cheaper. It's very targeted, and it is to make it a lot less costly for St. Lucians to benefit from these. And so, based on the intention of this motion, Madam President, I really hope that we understand the benefit to the people of this country and that we support it. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 order, which amends Schedule 1 and 3 of the Act. A. In the case of Schedule 1, Roman numeral 1, in Item 2.1, to include as zero-rated goods, the goods under the following customs tariff headings: other cheddar cheese in packages of 2.5 kilograms and more, other soybean oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other palm oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other sunflower oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other maize corn oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other vegetable oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, margarine shelf in containers 40 grams or less, biscuit unsweetened in packages of a content more than 5 ounces. Roman numeral 2. In Item 2.2, to include as a zero-rated supply of services, the supply of contracting services to the government with respect to Component 1 of the Renewable Energy Sector Development Project. B. In the case of Schedule 3, to include as an exempt import the import of goods for Component 1 of the Renewable Energy Sector Development Project. Senator Descartes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, this resolution before us today, which seeks Parliament approval to zero-rate a range of essential items, is not a policy triumph, Madam President. It is a confession of failure on the part of the government. We see a government that continues to tinker around with the cost of living crisis that St. Lucians are facing. For over 2 years, persons have lamented of the challenges that they face at the grocery stores. And the response of the government has been to mock legitimate concerns of citizens and to say that it is beyond their control, it's imported inflation. But on the eve of the election, we see that all of a sudden that the government has gotten so creative. It now can provide relief to 70 items. Now it's coming after now and tinkering again. You know, I mean, I heard the leader of government business said, well, you know, mélange. And you know, you do make mistakes sometimes, but you don't make mistakes and think out people's lives. And when you look at the policies implemented by this government, it has failed where cost of living is concerned. Fuel prices have been at $16, where every other country in the OECS have reduced the cost of fuel. And the government continues, and I saw some figures that it's close to $5 on the excise tax per gallon of diesel and unleaded gas. The government continues to in our assessment, overtaxed the population. Now, I know the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance has consistently said he's not an economist, and I understand that, because he would understand that the greatest tax on the poor is inflation. The poorest of the poor, the greatest tax on the poor is inflation. And so that is why he has not moved with alacrity, he has not moved with a sense of urgency to resolve the inflation crisis that is permeating in our economy today. And that's why when I always say thank God that it was the United West Party that was in power when COVID struck. Because if you had listened to the Prime Minister, well, the political leader then of the Labour Party, you would have gotten a sense that we had to go and shrivel up and curl up in a fetal position under our beds and wait for COVID to finish. But what we did was we gave real relief to people during the pandemic. The NIC, $65 million. And we implemented an economic recovery and resilience plan. An economic recovery and resilience plan. And you know, Madam President, instead of, I remember distinctly that there was a committee set up to come up with a response to the pandemic. And it was a bipartisan committee. State-owned other civil society entities were invited, and the members opposite were invited, and they attended one meeting, and then the subsequent meeting they sent in a letter indicating that they could not in all good conscience continue to support this initiative. That's when the country was experiencing the greatest shock in its history. The Labour Party decided to stay away, and then they went and had a march. And that is what we call leadership. That is the leadership that they speak of. A leadership that focuses only on politics and not people. Politics and not people. But you see the IMF Article 4 of 2024, and the number speaks very, very clear that between 2021 and 2024, the consumer price index rose by 2.4% in 2021, 6.5% in 2022, and 4.5% in 2023. Cumulatively, that is 13.4%. That's an erosion of real wages in this country. And that is what, and there was no urgency on the part of the government. All there was excuses. You heard utterances, oh, the sky is falling. But people were experiencing real challenges, Madam President, real challenges at the groceries. And up to today, people go to the supermarkets and they tell you, they go, every time they go, is the bags they get is smaller and smaller, because that's the challenges people are facing in this country. Madam President, you see, this government has failed to cushion the St. Lucian population. And I heard in this chamber a couple months ago that their response to inflation was vouchers, handing vouchers to people. Rather than dealing with the issue head on, they decided to hand. And importantly, you know, when inflation was rising, sorry, no, not this, sorry. No, stand on.
No, is it easy withdrawing? Because I'm going to stand.
I will withdraw the statement. Yes, not in this chamber. But when inflation was rising, the government chose to exacerbate the inflationary environment by increasing the price of bread. Now, I would never believe that it's a Labour Party that would increase bread in St. Lucia, because their mantra is bread, freedom and justice. So if someone had told me that it would be a Labour Party administration that would increase bread, I would never, my wildest dreams, believe so.
Senator Ferdinand.
Madam President, I stand on a point of order. Senator Descat is misleading this House, the Senate. to suggest or to say in any way, shape, or form that this government has increased the price of bread is the furthest from the truth and should not be permitted to stand. As a matter of fact, all the actions of this government we have come to this chamber to take action to reduce the cost of flour and other inputs that go into bread for bakers in this country through the Ministry of Commerce. And for the senator to stand and say that, I think this is a gross misrepresentation of the truth, and he should withdraw and discontinue along the lines of this government increasing the price of bread.
Senator, please respond.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, certainly the government did not do enough to ensure that the price of bread did not go up, Madam President.
So you are retracting that statement?
So I will retract that statement, but what I will say...
You'll rephrase. I
will rephrase it and say that the government did not do enough to ensure the price of bread did not go up at that particular point in time in St. Lucia. Bus fares will increase. Bus fares will increase. And that was, bus fares are regulated in this country, and so the government had it's a direct policy to increase bus fares in this. Now, I've always been one who believe that bus fares need to be increased more frequently and incrementally so that persons do not feel the burden when there's a sudden jump. And what we did during the pandemic, we provided a rebate to the public transportation sector. We understood the challenges and we said we could not allow them to increase bus fares at this particular time. And then you have the health and security levy, 2.5% that is added on top, a cascading effect on top of your 12.5%. And I heard someone saying, well, it's before the 12.5%, as if to suggest that it will change the dynamics. When you do the calculations, it translates to 15.3%. Any item that has both VAT and the health and security levy translates to a 15.3% more. And that's why I keep saying the biggest disinflationary policy in this country has been when the United West Party reduced VAT from 15% to 12.5%. From 15%, we have to ask ourselves, what would consumers, the average St. Lucian, be paying if VAT was at 15% currently? What would they have been paying? And thank God for a UW government that implemented a reduction in the VAT, and the St. Lucians at least have some level of reprieve where that is concerned. Madam President, we all know that when there is inflation, it results in a windfall in revenue for governments. And so data from the Economic and Social Review confirms that the government, the average tax yield between 2022 and 2024 was $1.24 billion, the highest in the history of this country. And if you compare that with the pre-pandemic of $985 million, translates to an average $285 million in nominal terms. That is a substantial increase, and the bulk of these came from taxes on international trade and transaction, of which import duties, customs service charge, and excise tax constitutes the bulk and lion's share. You see, I understand equally that inflation will increase the cost of goods and services to governments. But when you formulate policies in that sort of inflationary environment, there's a principle you must follow, and that principle is the principle of shared sacrifice. Shared sacrifice. And what we saw is a government that did not or didn't even understand what that concept of shared sacrifice meant. You see, the government could have or should have simply lowered the service charge of 6%. They had that. They could have done it. They could have looked at the duties and lowered it at the port of entry. And you know, that is a very simple policy, because rather than having to now go and tinker with your VAT, and globally it's not advise that you tinker with your VAT because it creates a lot of distortions. But you could have just reduced your service charge, which I think they're trying to do now, or they've done. And what that does is it gives you a sense of how much are you actually passing on to the consumer. Right now, this government cannot tell us what is the transfer, what is the reduction, the quantum of resources that they are in reduced prices that they're passing on to consumers. They cannot. They cannot even ascertain whether the retailers are passing on these to the consumers. If you cannot ascertain their quantum, you cannot ascertain whether it's actually being passed on, then this is a flawed policy. It is a flawed policy, and that's why when you meet average persons in the supermarkets, they tell you they don't see any reduction in its prices. Had the government done the sensible thing, look at your service charge, reduce your service charge at the port of entry, reduce your duties. The government could have known the amount that it was foregoing in revenue, and it didn't have to rely on the retailers to come in and by their benevolence to pass it on. Now, I'm not suggesting that they won't. I'm not in any way suggesting that they won't, but this is a flawed policy in my assessment. So, Madam, and I also want to draw to a point where in inflation there are two concepts, core inflation and headline inflation. And headline inflation is core inflation, inclusive of your food and fuel components of the inflation. Now, food and fuel are the most volatile components of your consumer price basket. And these naturally would adjust. They would fluctuate because fuel prices were, international fuel prices were up 100 or 80 US a barrel. They have now gone down. But what we see is if you do not treat or manage headline food and fuel properly, it sips into core inflation, the more persistent component of your inflation. And what that does, it makes your country structurally more expensive. And that's what we've seen. And when we talk about core, you talk about insurance premiums. You talk about vehicle transportation costs, consumer durables. These are components of the inflation, the consumer price basket that will never reduce because the government did not manage food and fuel inflation in this economy, and it has sipped into the core basket of the goods and services. And importantly, services. You may be able to adjust on the goods side, but services is very rare that you'll see a reduction in services, Madam President. So, Madam President, I want to say that, again, this is a catastrophic failure on the part of the government. The government has failed where inflation is concerned, and its policies are to simply tinker around with the real issues. And I'm asking, this government knows that. They know that they have failed the people of St. Lucia, and fuel prices have remained high, and the policy on food inflation has been far from adequate, Madam President. Thank you very much.
Senator Joahir.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for the opportunity to rise to make my contribution on this. I want to express my sympathies with the families from our sister island of Jamaica who've lost their loved ones due to this disaster. It is nothing that anybody would want for their own country. We've understood what a similar hurricane did to another sister island of Dominica, where they experienced over 225% destruction of their GDP. Sometimes we always say thank God for where St. Lucia is placed, and it might be our mercies, but in this particular case, Madam President, I want to also extend my voice or add my voice to expressing sympathies and to the government and people of Jamaica, wishing them a quick recovery. Madam President, I heard the comments from the opposition senators on VAT removal, and I wanted to excuse Senator Norbert, being that it was his first time in Parliament, and I believe my colleague senators gave justice to responding and educating him on these matters. But I also want to bring light to the motion, to the one at hand, and to address a few comments made by Senator Descott, who spoke about his government, well, at the time he was not in government, but who spoke about his government's contribution towards, towards alleviating the pain and suffering of St. Lucians who were enduring COVID. But Madam President, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe he was not a parliamentarian at the time, but he was chief economic advisor to a parliamentarian during that period. So he may be very well placed in understanding what I'm about to express to the House today. Madam President, during the reign of the last administration that he was part of, we noted that a company was imported to St. Lucia and paid over 15 million to do our budget that our civil servants are very well equipped to do. We also noted that the distress fund was stopped. The laptop program was stopped, and the leader of the opposition and his government said to parents, you go pay for it. We also know that a local medical transitioning team was paused and Cayman Health was brought in for $24 million. Pensioners' money was gifted to a company where lands were worth $90 million for a measly $30 million. The Diamol was worth $60 million and was sold for $13 million. 1,000 acres of land in Vieux Fort, where development could have taken place for the people of the South, was leased for $1 an acre to a foreigner. 1,000 acres for 99 years. He was present and part of that administration. Madam President, they killed the Jazz Festival, which could have brought significant income to tour operators, hairdressers, taxi drivers, and those persons that Senator Norbert has been crying for a long time. Madam President, they fired nice workers because they were associated with the Labour Party. You want to talk about cushioning the blow? And last, but by no means least, the PPP arrangement for the HIA was stopped. And I believe he was chief economic advisor at the time. I would hate to think that you, Senator, were responsible for this arrangement not being fulfilled. My point, Madam President, is the Senator has the audacity to come before the people of St. Lucia this morning and talk about cushioning the blow when all we saw was a Madi Puete, Tuesday after Tuesday, 500 million borrowed for COVID support. Where did that support go to?
Senator Norbert.
Yes, Madam President, I rise on a point of order.
The point of order.
I believe the Senator is misleading the House. She said, one, that it was his government. I think the government is the government of all St. Lucians and not his government. And two, she said that they fired nice workers because they were SLP supporters. It sounds like she has proof of that it's because the sole reason was because they were SLP supporters. So if she could provide me with the proof for that. And also the government of St. Lucia is a government of all people. There's no his government. Thank you.
Senator Joahir.
Thank you, Madam President. He worked with the government. His government, our government. He was part of the administration that caused the destruction and promotion of support for the people of St. Lucia. Chief Economic Advisor, I might be wrong if that's not the correct term, but he was part of the administration that led to these failed projects. The second part that the Senator mentioned, Madam President.
You wish to? Senator Descott.
So I rise on Madam President, to ask the young lady, while I was...
Correction. Senators.
Sorry, Senator.
No. I'm saying the senator is on the floor and I'm hearing talking. I need to hear what the senator is saying. So I would like silence in the forum, please. Senator Descartes.
Yes.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is that I was a public servant then. I was not part of an administration.
So this is a point of elucidation. You're giving an explanation.
I'm explaining
as a point
elucidation. I was working in the government, but I was not part of the administration, and she needs to retract that statement.
Senator Jawahir, I think you have 2 points of order. Now you will respond into one, and so it's 2 in 1 and then a separate one. So one about the nice workers and one about being part of the administration or part of the government. So you respond.
Thank you, Madam President. If my boss asks me to do something that in my conscience that I do not believe is right, I will not do it. So he is equally guilty and responsible for what I just said, Madam President. Whether he wants to say he was not part of, he was not in Parliament to debate bills, the point is he signed off on it and he was Chief Economic Advisor at the time. He had the decision to decide if he wanted to be part and parcel of that. And in addition to that, Madam President, it was not I who said it, what Senator Elisha Norbert is asking me to clarify. It was his party's PRO who said it, that 95% of the NICE workers were SLP supporters. And these people's contracts were terminated.
That's right.
Thank you, Madam President. But I can continue since they asked me to clarify and I allowed them and I permitted the elucidation. My point, Madam President, is this SLP administration, despite inheriting a deficit, despite having an economy that was not experiencing growth, we've been able to achieve growth year after year after year under this SLP administration. We've been able to reduce the rate of unemployment from 2 digits to now 8.8% as of last quarter. It's this SLP administration that provided support to pensioners on 3 occasions, support to teachers, scholarships to nurses, record-breaking scholarships to our students of St. Lucia to travel and study abroad. It is this government that implemented universal health coverage, this government that reinstated the laptop program, this government that is now about to pay 4 CXCs because young men and women only need 5 CXCs to get a job and the government is paying 4. We reduced and we subsidized fuel. We've lost millions annually doing that. We have subsidized rice, flour, sugar. We have supported fishermen. We have also provided fertilizer support.
Just on a point of elucidation, Madam, I would say...
Senator Joyer, are you prepared to yield?
No, I'm not. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. It is this SLP administration that understands what farmers are going through. And on 2 occasions, we have provided fertilizer support, giving them 1,000 gallon water tanks. Some of them used to have to carry water from rivers, the farmers from Mark. We've given those who experience natural disasters recovery and support. We all attended that event at the boxing plant in Dennery. Even when the government of St. Lucia was not producing boxes, we still offered that support. We have supported the people of St. Lucia across the spectrum. Teachers, pensioners, civil servants, the police. And the list goes on and on. And now we're about to ensure that no child will have to pay for early childhood education in this country. That is what we call tangible support. And in his own words, not coulda, woulda, shoulda. We saw the need and we have delivered. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Jean.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I rise in support of this motion, this resolution, to include zero-rated goods on the customs tariff, under the customs tariff headings, especially some of the goods that are presented here. Cheese, Madam President, is one that every family, unless you become vegan, but cheese is one of our major staples, as well as oil, margarine, and unsweetened biscuits. We know, Madam President, that most of us thrive on our unsweetened biscuits, Cricks, crackers, and the like. But, Madam President, we must not diminish the significance of zero rating these items, Madam President. We try to skirt around the issue, but in the words of Bob Marley, who feels it knows it. Madam President, these initiatives by the government of St. Lucia under the administration of Honorable Philip Joseph Pierre is aimed at reducing the effects of inflation on the vulnerable, on the poor people of St. Lucia, Madam President. So, Madam President, when one walks into a supermarket and they can get reduced prices of grocery items, Madam President, they are feeling it. They are feeling it in their pockets, Madam President. They are feeling it because they have to go home to their children, to their family, Madam President, and be able to put more food on the table. That is the effect of these zero-rated items. And Madam President, when I hear people who are learned in economics try to reduce the effects by misrepresenting exempt and zero-rated goods, I think this is disingenuous, Madam President. We must call a spade a spade. We must speak the truth to the people of St. Lucia, Madam President. When an item does no longer attracts VAT, when the zero-rated items are placed on the supermarket shelves, they bring down the prices. Madam President, my family has been able to do comparisons of the items on the shelves. And when we see the price of tuna fish, for example, jump from $6 to now $4, we know that prices have been reduced. Madam President, I'm hearing on the other side that there are other initiatives that ought to have been done. But Madam President, my members on the other side, the senators that represent the opposition, need to be more in touch with what is happening in our country, Madam President. Because, Madam President, going along with the zero rating of items, the 6% service charge has been removed on food items, Pajodi. Madam President, Zot Nipu, your Nipu, keep in touch with what is happening around them. Ou ka tan pli mepri et pli bagay, ou pa ka tan sa gouvernement ka fe by mom set lisi. Mais Madam President, the people of St. Lucia feel the effects, feel the positive effects of the initiatives of the government of St. Lucia at this time. Madam President, maka tan a bagay about sa gouvernement te fe le COVID te la. Madam President, during the time of COVID, and I heard that the leader of the opposition has been hailed for the handling of the COVID pandemic. Madam President, ma jamais tan bagay ko sa. During COVID, Madam President, an IMF loan was secured to provide relief to the people of St. Lucia. Madam President, you know what was said during that time? Roads were being built at a time when people were losing their jobs. People were getting their mortgages called in during that time. We seem to be suffering from amnesia. Madam President, it's not too long ago. COVID was in 2020, 2021. People, hotel workers were relieved of their jobs. People were losing their mortgages. Remember, the banks were saying you could pay the interest or pay the principal, whatever it was, right?
Senator Descart.
Yes, Madam President. Just on a point of order, the government at that time, in collaboration with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank.
Are you saying she's misleading? She's speaking. What is the point of?
She's misleading the House by saying
exactly what?
By saying that people's mortgages were being called. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the government's, the Monetary Council, they went in and they passed a moratorium. And you can go on the website so that the banks could not call on persons' mortgages. And that is a policy that the Monetary Council implemented to give people a relief during that period. So persons were not being, we ensured that persons' mortgages were not called. And so I want to clarify that there was decisive policy action, not just in St. Lucia, but at the ECCU level to protect mortgages and so that persons could be able to have a period, a moratorium, and once the pandemic sort of eased up, persons would then be able to start servicing. And some of it was that they would have to engage with the banks directly, but there was a broad policy that the United Workers' Party government supported during that time. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Jean.
Thank you, Madam President. But Madam President, I wish to advise the member that when he wants to elucidate me, he needs to ask me. Okay, thank you, but...
Senator Jean, he did indicate, I asked...
It was a point of order.
And he indicated that you were misleading, and he went on to give an explanation.
I didn't hear the mislead where I
asked him, and he said...
Yeah, but I didn't hear where I misled. I was misleading the House. I didn't hear the point that suggests that I was misleading the House. Because the Senator, Madam President, is talking about something completely different to what I said. People lost their mortgages. It does not matter that ECCB did whatever they did. The point is that there are people, after they got the moratorium, their mortgage spiked. And as a result, if you look in the Gazette, you would see the number of people who lost their properties as a result of that. Okay? So yes, there was an initiative, but it did not result in the effect that was required. Okay? So Madam President, going back to COVID, it was during that COVID time that the government embarked on road rehabilitation. And the very own government at that time, 2016-2021 government, said that the IMF said to build, 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 and keep the receipts. Zot changé ça? That was COVID time. And how effective was that to the people of St. Lucia, to the individuals, to us as residents of St. Lucia? Madam President, it was during that time when we heard of the NIC pensioners' money being given to investors who came with their hands swinging. Madam President, are you saying that this was a successful initiative for the people of St. Lucia? Madam President, who felt the effects of the government's initiatives at that time? Who? Who feels it, knows it, Madam President. And no matter what we say here, it is what the people of St. Lucia are feeling. And I can tell you right now, Madam President, that my colleague, Senator Jawahir, gave you some examples of what they felt. Madam President, the people of St. Lucia are now breathing a sigh of relief for the last 4.5 years. They are now breathing the relief of a minimum wage. Madam President, I went to an establishment and I was told by the manager that when he gave the workers their first check after the minimum wage was implemented, they knelt down on the ground and they kissed the ground with the check in their hand, because it was the first time that they were touching $1,000 salary, Madam President. That is the reality in St. Lucia. No matter how we come and cry that this government is doing nothing, the people out there are feeling the effects of the positive initiatives that the Philip JPA administration has been doing. Madam President, we now have increased pensions. A gentleman who I met from Rivadori told me this was the first time he was getting $725 as a result of the pensions increase, because he's a government pensioner.
Senator Norbert.
Madam President, I rise on a point of order.
What's your point of order?
I do not think that the senator, is speaking to the motion before us on the pensions. We want the resolution for the value-added tax. I think she's going too far off the topic.
Thank you for your point of order, Senator. It's a debate, and in some cases when one member has spoken and may have touched on certain issues, the opposition or the opposing team may choose to respond in like manner. Okay, so in such a case, I will allow, because your colleague did speak a lot of the issues as it pertains to COVID, etc., and a lot of economic issues and policies. So in that case, I shall allow Senator Jean to proceed on that line for a while.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
I'm very happy you're taking note of your standing orders, using your standing orders. It shows you're a good student. Very good.
So, Madam President, I'm just giving a few initiatives of the government of St. Lucia to show you, Madam President, that it's not only the relief of food items that the government has given. We have to put all of this in the wider context. That, Madam President, people have greater disposable income. And remember also, the government increased personal allowances. So all of that is to ensure that people can live better. Okay? Madam President, we also have salary increases to public officers. Temporary teachers now get their August salary. So all of that will help to cushion the inflationary effects. Because, Madam President, what the opposition is not telling people is that we have absolutely no control over the landed cost of goods in St. Lucia. We have a high import bill, but our very own Prime Minister has been encouraging us to eat what we grow what we eat. We took that, they took it, Madam President, and they ridiculed the Prime Minister, saying the Prime Minister say, eat fig, eat fig, eat fig, tuk timamai, eat fig, eat fig. But that is exactly what we are trying to do. Get our people to eat what we grow, to reduce the amount of imports that we have. Because that is what we can control, but we cannot control what comes through, the price of what comes through the ports. Madam President, while we have already passed the barrel concessions, if you notice, over the years, the value of the barrels have been increasing. Why? Because the cost of the goods that are going in the barrel from overseas are increasing as well. If you go to the United States now, a barrel that would normally cost about 600 US, or the items in there, food, basic food items, toiletries and so on, in the past would cost about 600 US dollars to fill one barrel. Now it costs over $1,000. So we have no control over that. And you're hearing the citizens of the United States lamenting the cost of food items. Just recently, Madam President, I don't know if we heard about it, a dozen eggs in the United States was costing over $15 US. 1 dozen eggs. Do we have control over that? We don't import eggs, thank God. But it just tells you what the people in the United States and the wider world are feeling. So when we come to St. Lucia and we want to make people believe that it is Philip J. Pierre that have the prices of goods on the shelves at a high level, that is not true. That is misinformation, Madam President. And we have to look at the initiatives that the government is implementing with a view to causing soulagement for the people of St. Lucia. C'est ça nous ka try faire. Puis, nous pas ça just bay moun lahan, mais si nous baisser, c'est pour ya bon supermarket là. C'est moun la kay ni pli l'argent pour faire l'autre bagay. So, Madam President, that's my point. I hear Senator Norbert want to say that I am going on a frolic of my own. Don't look at time. The president looks at the time. The very same Senator Norbert, I don't know where from the sky he speaks about speech to text and so on in another thing, but wants to say that I'm straying from what I'm saying. I am looking at the motion that is before us. The motion is to remove VAT on food items that will assist the people of St. Lucia. Madam President, during the very same COVID, over $7 million went into COVID vaccines.
Yes, remind them.
Madam President. Up to now, every time I come to the Senate and we have to speak about COVID, I have been asking for our money back. We all must ask for the monies of the people of St. Lucia.
Senator Descartes.
On a point of order, Madam President.
What is your point of order?
The people of St. Lucia have gotten part of their monies back, and she needs to clarify that. The people of St. Lucia have gotten part of their monies, and she needs to...
So that was a point of elucidation? It wasn't a
she
point
said
of...
they have not gotten their monies back.
But you were elucidating as opposed to saying she was misleading.
Yes.
Okay. Senator Jean.
Madam President, the opposition must stop diminishing our intelligence, Madam President. We are a proud people. We are an intelligent people. We know what we want, Madam President. And if we give somebody $7 million until we get back our $7.3 million, we have not received our monies back. We need to go and get our monies for the vaccines in full.
That's right.
Stop diminishing us. We are a proud people, proud products of St. Lucia. So to think that we gave 7.3 and we get a little back and you're lucky you get some back. Huh? That is who we are. That is what we are. Madam President, we all under opposition on behalf of the people of St. Lucia. Again, somebody said that they should do what? Exhumation, whatever? Absolution. Absolution. You don't have to come and apologize to the people of St. Lucia for what you did to us during that period. You don't have to apologize. And as we move closer to the Monday, until the people of St. Lucia hear your confession, they are going to make the right decision. Madam President, before I close on this matter, I want to find out, Madam President, because I'm hearing some pronouncements. and one pronouncement or policy initiative that is being proposed by the opposition is to reduce VAT to 12.5%. Moi vle mande, combien VAT nou ka paye à présent? Hein?
Senator Descartes,
On a point of order,
what's your point of order?
I never said to reduce VAT to 12.5%. I never said that.
Was it you she was referring to? She said the party. I don't think she referred to you
Okay.
specifically.
But I never
Am I
said-
right in this way, Senator Jean? Yes, she was not referring to you. She spoke of the party. Yes.
Madam President, I said the opposition. That's what I said. I never said you did. Okay? Your opposition, and perhaps they need you, Madam President. They need Mr. Senator Descartes to review some of the initiatives that are being presented to the people of St. Lucia so that you can vet them before they come out to the public. Okay? Because it was said by the opposition party that VAT will be reduced to 12.5%. So my question is, what is the current VAT rate? Okay? All in all, Madam President, I want to let the people of St. Lucia know that based on the initiatives of the current Philip J. Pierre administration, we have all seen, and they are feeling it, that we are putting people first. We are a people-centered government. We are looking to provide relief to the vulnerable, to the poor. We still stand on the mantra of bread, freedom, and justice. Notwithstanding that the price of flour was increased on the international market, by providing concessions at the local level, we can keep the price of bread low. Madam President, again, who feels it, knows it. Look, in this very same resolution, this same motion, we have included unsweetened biscuits. Si ou pasa manje pe, ou kay manje biscuit. So again, provision is made to provide such relief. So, Madam President, I reiterate my support for this motion to zero rate some additional food items. Nous pas check, la tenue 70 avant, mais on mette combien encore? More on them. Don't diminish it to 45 or 25. Let's continue adding from the 70 up, because very soon almost everything is going to be. Madam President, I need some protection.
Will you speak to the chair and not across the chamber, please? Please proceed, Senator Shah.
So, Madam President, we are still reducing the prices of food for our people of St. Lucia. There is more to come. We continue to do it. We continue to provide more income support to the people of St. Lucia by increasing their disposable income, by giving them more incentives, by doing so much more for the people of St. Lucia. And again, in the words of Bob Marley, who feels it, knows it. I thank you, Madam President.
Senator, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I am always pleased when my colleagues give good treatment to the motion or the bill. It means that it gives me less responsibility at the end to have to respond to some of the, particularly the claims that the members across have raised. Just by way of wrapping up, Madam President, I want to point to a few issues here. One, I noted that the member opposite attempted to lecture this House on the cost of living. It has happened before because, you know, I don't have an issue when members try to mimic the leader of opposition in the lower chamber and the former leader of opposition business in this chamber always try to do the same. And every time it was done, it showed up I don't want to use the word incompetence, but it showed up the ineffectiveness and the the gap that exists in the opposition's argument about the cost of living. So, Madam President, the idea of importing inflation is not something that we invented. It's a fact. And I think Senator Jean has dealt with that when she spoke about the US, so I don't have to speak about that. The Senator Descott mentioned that the government is coming on the eve of election to bring relief. Madam President, may I remind him, I don't know if he was following the politics of St. Lucia since we got into government, but I need to remind him that from the time this government assumed office in 2021, we have been coming to this chamber and we have been implementing policies that are aimed at reducing the cost of living and making life better for the people of St. Lucia. That's what we're about. Every day, every Monday I go to cabinet, the Prime Minister of this country and my colleagues, we spend hours figuring out how we can make the lives of the people of St. Lucia better. That's our agenda. And so whether it is direct relief or by, as we have said, putting more money into the pockets of people, there is every effort to do so. So let me just quickly remind the chamber and the senators across, what are some of the things that maybe we have not just mentioned in detail that the government has done to deal with the cost of living? Madam President, this is a government that went about and increased the tax-free threshold for everybody in this country from $18,000 a year to, was it $25,000 a year? So it means that if your annual salary is below $25,000, you don't pay tax. That is giving you more in your pocket, and that is targeting people at the lower end of the income bracket. Madam President, it is this government that increased the pensioners' receipts, benefits, and gave them other breaks by putting money directly into their pockets. Pensioners are people too, they spend money. Madam President, it is this government that paid teachers and increased TMA, teacher materials allowance. And we have a member sitting there, I know he got his this year, Madam President. He got his this year because he was a teacher. I hope he was and not is. But if he's sitting here, it means he's no longer a teacher. But I mean, he'll remain an educator forever. We are educators forever. But he's not practicing and he's not employed in the government service as a teacher. But I'm sure well, I hope so, Madam President. I would really hope so. Madam President, it was last month, September, that teachers in St. Lucia, including Senator Elisha Norbert, received their teacher materials allowance. Madam President, to help the teachers and in terms of their support for the students. $1,400 it was increased. And I know he was a teacher who worked in the special needs department, and he would have had to do so much more to help the students that he works with. Madam President, it was this government that increased the salary of public servants, gave them their salary increase. You're talking about relief for people and cost of living. When you put money in people's pocket, they have more disposable income and they can feel the relief. Madam President, the opposition wants you to forget that it is this government that decided to pay temporary teachers a salary in August. Madam President, the opposition wants you to forget that it is this government that is paying CSEC, CXC for subjects, as well as facilities fees for children in this country. If you do the mathematics, the average child would pay about $500 to $600 for CXC. The average facility fee would be about $200+ for the year. That is money that parents have in their pockets that they can use to offset the cost of living. Madam President, the opposition wants you to forget that this government has reduced the cost of building materials. And was the back pay paid? The back pay that they couldn't pay, we paid it, Madam President. That's money in the pockets of people of this country. Madam President, the opposition wants you to forget. And Senator Descat raised the COVID issue. He raised the COVID issue. Let us respond to that in one sentence. Madam President, if Senator Descat, and he stood to challenge Senator Jean when she said that we want our money back. Madam President, we have math people inside. If you gave an entity, and what's the name of the entity that was procuring COVID for us? It is Good Vibrations Entertainment Company. Vous voulez dire, Madame Présidente, nous malades de COVID, nous besoin de vaccin pour bailler cette licence. Ou quand aller bailler en compagnie, Good Vibrations Entertainment Company, massive key virus qui ça y a entertain. $7 million cette licence pour vaccin nous pas jamais joué.
Senator Norbert.
Oh yes. Mr. Rise on a point of order.
What is your point of order, Senator?
My point of order is the senator is imputing improper motives. He's suggesting that the opposition wants the people to forget. Nobody ever said that they want anybody to forget the work of the government of St. Lucia, and he said it a number of times. And we must always remember that there is one government, not this government or that government. There is one government, and I would appreciate it if he does not assume that we want anybody to forget anything. Thank you.
Proceed, Senator.
Madam President, let me first of all make sure that I did not say the government. I said the opposition wants you to forget. And the utterances of the opposition, both on platforms and in this chamber, they are telling you that, as Senator Descat stated, this government is responsible, is because of our failure that we have to now come and make those amendments. It is suggesting to me that the opposition wants to lay the blame hand on this present government and does not want us to remember or wants us to forget the atrocities that have led us to where we are today. That's the point. So, Madam President, the COVID issue. So, si vous prêtez, si vous baillez un monde $7 million, eh bien, banque là prête $7 million, et vous payez 2 millions de billets, vous avez fini de payer banque là? Ou pas de banque là? Madam President, $2 million has been paid back, and of course, Senator Descat was within his rights to say yes, some has been paid. Madam President, Senator Norbert was a math teacher along with myself. We understand that, and I'm sure economists are supposed to do math. 2 out of 7, 2 sevens is 28.57%. That is paid back. That means over 71% of the monies that we have, that is out there, we have not received it. En haut 70% l'argent vaccine cette ici, nous pouvons joindre. So, okay, nous avons anti-kakadan, no happy. Madam President, the opposition.
Senator Norbert.
Rising on the point of order.
What's your point of order, Senator Norbert?
I don't think you can relate to matters that are in court in the House of Senate.
To which matter are you referring?
Trying to recover the monies paid for vaccines.
Is that matter in court?
It's not in court? Okay.
Please proceed.
Madam President, when I met Senator Norbert downstairs this morning, we greeted each other, and he did tell me he's here and he's hoping to learn. And as a good teacher, you have to also be a good student. And I'm hoping that he's learning. Before you rise on a point of order, may I just suggest to the Senator that you must ensure that you have the facts. There is no subjudicial matter when it relates to the vaccines, and so I am in no way in breach of the standing orders when I refer to the vaccines issue. So Senator Norbert should have checked to make sure before he stopped me for the third time that this matter is not a matter that is under judicial review. Madam President, and I would want him to spend some more time studying the standing orders. That is the Bible here. All of us here have been told when we get here that we should study it, and but Madam President, he keeps interrupting me, and each time he interrupts me, the point of order that he's raising does not apply. Madam President, the vaccines that we never saw, and that is critical. The government then, that they want you to forget, ordered these vaccines from an entertainment company. What does that say to you with procurement? What does that say about their procurement methods? You understand? And we want our vaccines. Madam President, nous ka continuer dire ça. Cet lycéen, nous tous voulons l'argent vaccine nous. Nous voulons. Nous besoin toute l'argent vaccine là. Parce que nous
Senator Descartes.
bagaille pour faire by cette lycée et puis ça. Sorry.
I don't want to disturb the honourable member on a point of order. I also want to draw to his attention that it was not just St. Lucia.
Senator, this is a point of elucidation.
A point of elucidation, rather.
Are you prepared to yield, Senator?
So it was not just St. Lucia who went into this particular arrangement. There was Barbados, there was Bahamas, and it's because at that particular time, you would recall that in the north, in Canada, the US, there was vaccine hoarding, and the Karen government tried its best. In the case of Canada, it was said that they had 2 or 3 times the vaccines that was needed. So they were hoarding, and the government tried all within its power to try to get vaccines, to vaccinate our people. Vaccinate our people. All right? And so I don't believe that there was any malice in the attempt. There was no malice on the part of the government. There was no malice on the
Senator,
part of the government.
I think you have made your point.
Thank you very much.
Your elucidation has gone beyond. Yes. Proceed, Senator.
Madam
Ferdinand.
President, moi savent des sénateurs qui viennent aujourd'hui à 9, mais yo mande yo préparé pour calte ibetsa kale ici because I am hearing Senator Descartes, and I was gracious. I yielded, allowed him to elucidate. I'm a very polite gentleman, but he didn't make good use of the elucidation opportunity that he had, because he used an indication or an example about the other islands. Madam President, vous savez juste toujours babat pas jamais payer 10 pièces vaccine. So, some government, particularly, it was not in any way malicious. Some government pas malicious, government est couillon. Ça c'est couillon, and I hope I can use that. That's not parliamentary. It's not violating. Gouvernement, ça là, c'était un gouvernement qui était couillon. How the other governments who were talking about getting, yes, they were hogging the vaccines, they didn't put their money in fire. They didn't take the money of the citizens of Barbados and put it in the fire. We did. 100%. Because they must have known that procurement, that company was in no position to procure vaccines. So, c'est le gouvernement qui était couillon tellement, point l'argent nous, buy un monde qui a fait des affaires entertainment, buy good vibration, ça y est. Et puis après, on a dit moi, there was no malicious intent. Well, if it was not malicious intent, it was incompetence and stupidity. Madam President, the final point I want to respond to is the issue of the VAT reduction that the opposition continues to talk about, how they reduced VAT by 2.5%. Madam President, by the time that decision was made, over $53 million had been foregone in revenue. And the UWP government then, by the time they had made the decision to reduce not the whole VAT that they promised you, not the entire 15%, 2.5%, they were already in enough crisis that they never did any further reduction. So we know that this formula was not going to work. And so, Madam President, we inherited it. We are working with it. That is why, Madam President, at this time, we have to be coming to this chamber to find ways to provide relief for our people incrementally, in bits, in small amounts, in different steps, because we would have loved that we could have done it differently. But we have to be fiscally responsible. So, Madam President, while they were reducing that VAT, do you know, Madam President, that they also imposed a levy, what's the tourism levy, of $1.50 increase on the price of fuel. That is from $2.50 to $4, representing a 60% in the increase. May you back up this up? Yes. Madam President, I do not want to belay the point, but I will tell you again, Madam President, when this government comes here to make amendments or to seek the approval of this chamber to give relief to the people of St. Lucia for the cost of living. And I also, one more thing I almost forgot. The senator mentioned the increase of price of bread, and he tried to ridicule our mantra of bread, freedom, and justice. I defend that, you know, Madam President. I defend that to the core, because it's a core principle of the party that I represent. It's a core principle. It's not something to papi show. So when you attack the price of bread and you say we didn't do anything about it, do you know, Madam President, that when the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine started, and the price of wheat skyrocketed internationally, we were the government who ensured that we subsidized the cost of flour and other goods, rice, sugar, to ensure that the cost of bread did not rise. If we had not done so, and the Minister for Commerce has come to this House and explained it, the cost of certain items, including bread, would have been over 20% higher in this country if we had not subsidized. So, Madam President, I don't want to go back to all the examples that Senator Jean mentioned with COVID borrowing, over $300 million. DFCs, over $100 million that we inherited as a government, and we have to pay. Thank God, Philip Pierre and the St. Lucia Labour Party government is paying back those debts, and we have reduced those loans significantly on the backs of the people of St. Lucia. We came into government and found that opposition Sorry?
The member, on a point of order, he said that they've reduced those loans on the back of St. Lucians. What we know for certain...
Point of order, point of release.
Point of order. What loans have have you reduced? If you look at the debt has gone up.
Senator Descartes.
Yes.
Your point of order, are you saying that the leader of government is misleading the House?
He's misleading the House by saying that they have reduced the loans. The nominal debt has gone up. And it's not in a crisis period. Debt has gone up. So which loans are you talking about? As a matter of fact, the borrowing we did during the pandemic made the debt profile a lot better. We were going with concessional loans, longer tenure loans. But what is certain is that the debt have not reduced. The debt has been increasing. It has been increasing. Yes, the debt to GB has gone down, but the nominal debt value has kept going up. And you've borrowed about the same amount as during the previous administration.
Senator, leader of government business.
Madam President, I will disagree all. I fais Senator Descartes Choji, moi pas pièce économiste. Car dis-moi about qui ça dit la dette, au quel langage qui a servi là. What I'm speaking is basic facts. And I heard him say it. The debt to GDP ratio has gone down. So that's where we're going. The debt profile of this country, when we inherited what we inherited in this country, as opposed to what it is now, everybody, it's in the books. It is far better. We have borrowed less, and we are paying our debts. And a lot of the debt we are paying is debt that we inherited from the previous government. So I'm happy he mentioned the debt to GDP ratio. So, Madam President, Pierre Scalte, nice fancy economics language, pakaivini, tuble mo isia. Madam President, let me wrap up. I want to say to this chamber and to the people of St. Lucia that every step that we've taken and every motion today, every item that we have attempted to reduce the VAT and any other cost on, the intention is to make it easier, less expensive for the people of St. Lucia. And so anyone who does not see merit in that does not like the people of St. Lucia and does not appreciate what we are doing on behalf of our people. And I want to urge the opposition, along with any other person who does not see the merit in that, to reflect on what we need to do and how we need to represent the interests of our people. And so, Madam President, with that said, I put this motion to this chamber for its approval. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that Parliament, by affirmative resolution, approves the draft value-added tax amendment of Schedules 1 and 3 order, which amends Schedules 1 and 3 of the Act A, in the case of Schedule 1, Roman numeral 1, in Item 2.1, to include as zero-rated goods the goods under the following customs tariff headings. Other, cheddar cheese in packages of 2.5 kilograms and more. Other, soybean oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other palm oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other sunflower oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other maize corn oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, other vegetable oil in bottles 750 milliliters or less, margarine shelf in containers 40 grams or less, biscuit unsweetened in packages of a content more than 5 ounces. Roman numeral 2. In item 2.2, to include as a zero-rated supply of services, the supply of contracting services to the government with respect to component 1 of the renewable energy sector development project. B, in the case of Schedule 3, to include as an exempt import the import of goods for component 1 of the renewable energy sector development project. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Bills. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment.
Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the Senate.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Public Procurement Amendment.
Public Procurement Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill be presented for a second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the Senate.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Community Tourism Development Amendment.
Community Tourism Development Amendment.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to enable this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Community Tourism Development Amendment. Madam President, this is an amendment I'm very pleased to be here to present because I have been able to appreciate the benefits of the community tourism concept to the people of this country. Previous to that, Madam President, we came here sometime last year to pass the community tourism, the Tourism Development Bill, or the TDA, that is now the Tourism Development Act. And Madam President, that act sought to create an environment that was more conducive and that was more enabling for more investment, both external and local investment to be made in the tourism sector, and to give greater participation and ownership of St. Lucians to the tourism sector. Madam President, out of this, the Community Tourism Act, or the Community Tourism Bill, was then brought to this chamber, and the Community Tourism Agency was set up. Previously, we had something called village tourism. That concept also had a certain intention. But what we did, we thought that the community tourism concept was more comprehensive, more inclusive, and provided for the average St. Lucian to be able to participate better and to own part of the tourism industry. We believe that the industry is meant to serve the people of this country, and that they should not only, just be the regular hotel workers, but they should own the industry. They should be able to have direct ownership, and they can invest in the industry. And Madam President, there have been a whole host of initiatives that we've taken to ensure that the Community Tourism Agency serves that purpose. And so, Madam President, this specific amendment of Section 66 and 67, for example, enacts the TDA and provides new provisions and structures that directly impact the operationalization of the Tourism Development Act. And as such, these amendments are necessary to ensure that there is consistency and an alignment with the two pieces of legislation. When we introduced the TDA, there were other pieces of legislation that exist before, like there were two that we had to actually harmonize. So, Madam President, what we are seeking to do is basically to be able to get those two pieces of legislation aligned, because they seem to want to do the same thing, but the community tourism is geared towards targeting people within the pockets of our country. So, for example, the community jazz festival events, the fringe events, these are also events that emanate from that concept, where although you have your main stage events at Pigeon Island and Soufrière, and we used to have Fondor, now you have the community jazz events spreading around the entire country in Micoud, in Babonneau, in Derisso, in Choiseul, and that concept grew out of the idea of getting the community tourism idea. I know that there are several examples that can be cited. Some of my colleagues here will probably do so. But just by way of context, I wanted to place it in that context so that it explains why we need to make these amendments. And so, Madam President, I will yield for now and hope that members can support the idea of these amendments that we propose to make.
Senators, the question is that the Community Tourism Development Amendment Bill be read a second time. Sir.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, while this CTD, as it's been abbreviated as the Community Tourism Development Act, introduces useful administrative updates, it lacks transparency, inclusivity, and sustainability measures to ensure that the true intent of community empowerment is realized. Without stronger safeguards and equity mechanisms, the Act risks becoming overly politicized, Madam President. And one of the areas I want to highlight is the concentration of discretionary powers in the hands of the minister. The amendment empowers the minister to determine whether applications for tax relief are reviewed by the Tourism Incentive, Investment or Cabinet based on their value. This introduces significant discretionary authority without transparency safeguards, Madam President. The lack of an appeals mechanism or published evaluation criteria risk political interference and unequal treatment of applicants. The arbitrary 1 million threshold could also exclude smaller community-based initiatives from fair consideration. So, in terms of the recommendation, introduce the introduction of a standardized evaluation framework which publish eligible criteria, impact metrics, and an annual report detailing incentive approvals. And that's very important. One of the concerns for me is I hear a number of persons and communities have benefited but we do not know the quantum of resources, the number of individuals, and that is critical. There is a bit of duplication across tourism legislation. The bill cross-references 3 overlapping legislative frameworks: the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, the Tourism Investment Act, and the Tourism Development Act. This creates legislative clutter and administrative confusion, making compliance difficult for investors and smaller operators. So I would like to recommend consolidating these 3 instruments into a single harmonized tourism incentive framework to improve coherence, clarity, and policy efficiency. The other area, when we look at the recommendations, is the ambiguity with regards to the definition of community tourism. Expanding the definition of community tourism projects to include tour services and allowing constituency councils to qualify, in particular, as businesses may dilute the Act's grassroots intent, and that's very important. Constituency councils, we know, are inherently political in nature most times, and that raises the issue of potential patronage. Without clear boundaries, large commercial operators could also benefit under the guise of a community tourism project. So there must be clearly define what is community tourism as projects that demonstrate local ownership, community benefit, and participatory governance, while excluding political entities from direct eligibility. And the other area we want to highlight is the issue of transparency and accountability gaps. The Act does not require publication of successful applicants. This omission undermines public trust and accountability. So we are saying that mandate an annual publication of the tourism incentives reporting list with approved projects, values, and outcomes. Thank you very much, Madam President. I yield.
Senator Charles.
He said, don't touch this. Madam President, fellow senators, bonjour. I'd like to join in welcoming Senators Norbert and Descartes, and also to join my colleagues who have recognized mon héritage créole. Et moi-même pas pour parler de créole parce que tout le monde qui parle créole. C'est ça mon motif là. Madam President, just to speak briefly on the amendment before us. And sometimes I've had my reservations about what is perceived to be community tourism. It appears that it's something that is evolving. Hence the reason why we have to come to the House with an amendment to add a tour. I think we should start thinking a bit more about what draws people to a community. Saki we share sala community porte monisia. What is the, for instance, we have festivals, we have attractions and so forth that would draw, that would make the community have some value. And I think as a result of that, there has to be some additional work done in protecting these resources in the community. So I think I want to address my comments to the leader of government business, who is also in the ministry responsible for tourism, culture, and creative industries, to give some deep thoughts to some additional work in ensuring that we do some kind of inventory or mapping of these resources in the communities. And I speak particularly of the non-physical, as we call the non-physical heritage, because this focuses on accommodation towards what we can touch, what is physical. But the non-physical heritage is also a valuable asset, and if we don't pay attention to it, it could easily be lost before we start adding it to the list of attractions. So while as I support the amendments, I think we have to go a bit deeper to ensure next time we come to the House, we'll come with a more comprehensive amendment that speaks to this non-physical heritage. The question of the, I think one Senator Desca spoke of the question of the powers granted to the minister. I have no issue with granting powers to the minister if it makes things much easier. Too often when we have legislation like this, we sometimes we create bodies that are so onerous in granting approvals. And to me, the more nimble the approval structure is, the better. Whereas you must ensure there are controls that you could guard from abuse. But we have to, at the same time, see the validity of including some of these measures that would make it much easier for granting these approvals. And this is just my 2 points on this this amendment, Madam President, and I would add my full support to it. Thank you very much.
Senator Prosper, Antoine Prosper.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we should not forget the main purpose of community tourism. It is to ensure that the tourism dollar, that the locals benefit from the tourism dollar, and not just the bigger hotels and those who come from abroad, but to ensure that the tourist, the visitor, is immersed in our culture, enjoys our music, enjoys the way of life of the people. And this is why, to get a better appreciation of the people and of the country. And this is why we are bringing community tourism. We are moving away from people going to school to get a job. We are encouraging entrepreneurship in St. Lucia. And therefore, our locals can start their own small businesses and make a livelihood from tourism. This is basically why we are introducing community tourism. We are introducing another product. Let the visitor get an authentic feel of the island. Not sitting at a hotel, but coming into the communities and eat the food that we eat and enjoy the music that we enjoy. Help us prepare our food, learn from us. Walk through the small trails in the communities, see the farmers planting crops, learn about our lifestyle. This is basically what we want. And we must admit that our locals have been benefiting. We have the cabaret crawl all across the island. We have the Choiseul Craft Heritage Village, Denry Seafood Fiesta, the Miku Cultural Train, Ancillary Farm to the table. So we are actually bringing tourism outside of the hotels in the city and bringing tourism to the people so that they can sell the mangoes, they can sell the pemi, and all of those local things that we have. These projects showcase St. Lucia's authentic culture, our cuisine, our creativity, while ensuring that the tourism revenue circulates within the local economy. This is what we are doing, Madam President. Madam President, to date, the Community Tourism Agency has given 25 loan grants they have been disbursed representing 3.5 million in the accommodation, food, and beverage and recreation subsectors. This represents, as I said, 25 locals who are now new business owners. New business owners, not foreigners, locals who are new business owners. The agency currently has $1.17 million. That represents 8 projects currently at the bank pending approval with an investment value of $1.76 million. So we are investing in the people of St. Lucia. We are investing in our people to ensure that they get bread, to ensure that they have their freedom, and to ensure that there is justice. The CTA has identified at least 20 projects set to be rolled out in the next 18 months to stimulate entrepreneurship, as I said before, because we want the people of St. Lucia to own the tourism industry. We want the people of St. Lucia to be able to make a livelihood from the tourism industry. We want the people of St. Lucia to be able to get rich in tourism, not just the expatriates. Madam President, so we must support community tourism. We must encourage our people to invest in community tourism. And this is why this initiative, in the first place, was started. So I want those on the other side, Madam President, to understand that we put people first. And this is why we continue saying we put people first, because the people of St. Lucia must enjoy what is ours. The people of St. Lucia must be able to make a livelihood from the resources, from our local resources. The people from St. Lucia must be able to make a livelihood so that they do not have to depend on, what did you say, vouchers? So what we are doing is elevating our people. We are supporting them right now, but our intention is to elevate the people of St. Lucia so that they will be able to sustain themselves in the future. I thank you, Madam.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you again to my colleague senators for their contributions to that discussion, this debate. I noted a few issues here, and I think the idea of the powers of the minister, I think Senator Descott mentioned, it is quite normal that the minister who is elected most of the time and who is appointed to that ministry is the one who is given the authority to do certain things. And in every statutory organization in those agencies, the minister has a very vital role to play. So while I believe ministers must be held accountable and must not be given carte blanche power to do whatever they want, but they have certain duties, and these lie within their purview. The issue of unequal treatment and, suggested there, I have an issue with that, Madam President, because there's this kind of suspicion that people think that because they do certain things that you will do the same. We don't engage in that kind of, nepotism and discrimination when it comes to access to the resources and assets of this country. What we do is that we create the avenue for St. Lucians to benefit. So the Community Tourism Agency was set up with professionals. People want to benefit. You bring in your application. If you don't know how to do it, we help you, train you, and your application is approved on merit. And Madam President, I want us to dispel this thing about, unequal treatment and, this kind of, that suggests any kind of doctrine that we don't follow. Sorry. The thing about, and I think Senator Descartes mentioned something, but I think he probably did not know that I did mention it, maybe not to a larger extent or in detail. He's suggesting that exactly what the TDA has done. Having the harmonization of the previous legislation, the TSIA and the TIA. When we drafted and presented this tourism development bill in this House, in the Senate as well, Madam President, that is exactly what we did. We synchronized the existing legislation. We had the drafters to review it, and where there were conflicts, we resolved it, and that is what the TDA has done. But this one is the Community Tourism Act, which is specific to community tourism, and we want it to be aligned. So what he suggested is exactly what the TDA had done. Now, there's a suggestion he made or something he mentioned regarding the councils. I'm not so sure that this thing will work. You see, the very idea that constituency councils are constituted on political appointments, that in itself should not be encouraged as an institution to operate community tourism. Because if you believe that the councillors and the board members and them are people that are handpicked by politicians, why would you want them to be the ones to administer that? It's against the same principle. So we believe it is better to allow St. Lucians to go through the agency, which does not have any preference for that person or that person, rather than put this in the hands of an institution that is clearly and has been very well noted to have members that are appointed by politicians. So I think it defeated the argument. And I noticed Senator Descartes this time around, he stuck to his script. I noticed he's learning, Madam President. I don't know where the script came from, but he stuck to his script. And I thought that was interesting. And finally, Madam President, there was a suggestion regarding mapping out our constituencies and our communities to be able to identify the community assets that we can tap into, and I think Senator Charles was suggesting that, and I think that brings to mind the let me just get some reference there to respond to him. That brings to mind the idea of what we have actually done, and I want to just enlighten Senator Charles and the rest of us. It's a very good idea to be able to identify and map out the various assets within your various communities. And that helps you to create a proper database and to be very deliberate in the initiatives you take in certain communities. And so, Madam President, that is essentially why we have been able to support certain initiatives that are unique to certain communities. Around this country, different communities are known for different things. So let's go to Monrepo, where Senator Norbert is from. Monrepo has a history of cultural icons. Bellevue, the Sesendes Cats and those people. Canneries and Florita Marquis. There are certain communities, Bellevue, you would hear about drumming. Babonneau, the Ridge of Good Waters. The flora and fauna. There is so, between the two rivers. There are certain communities that have a certain vibe and a certain cultural identity. That is what the community tourism targets. So I'm happy that Senator Charles raised that, because I can just make reference quickly, Madam President, to some of the initiatives that actually match the assets that the communities have. So for example, Eastern Exotic Tours, you will find that in the Dennery Basin, the Dennery Valley. That's one of the initiatives that community tourism has supported, and ATVs and so on is part of that. And on that tour, there's also a part where the visitor can participate in farine making and other activities that are basically indigenous or consistent with the people in the community. The Gamal gift store and dinner in Soufre, again, there are certain unique characteristics in the location that you can only find there. Of course, you know about the chocolate experience at Hotel Chocolat. Obey's Sanctuary in Black Bay. I was there at the opening, and incidentally, the owner is a former schoolmate of mine, and when I got there, I was asking her, so who's the owner of this place? I need to meet the owner before the ceremony starts. And then she says, hey, but she called me by my first name, but I'm the owner. I said, you know, and it was just so refreshing to see my schoolmate becoming a business owner, and I didn't even know. And she offers something unique in terms of what the product has. And it's in sync with the community. There's another one. There's a Bon Vivant Chateau in Balata. Again, it epitomizes the area. There's the Choiseul community is well known for their craft, their prowess. And there are quite a few of these there that reflect that. The fish fry events in Ancillary, in Dennery, these are fishing communities. We also have a few to be launched next month. The Choiseul Earth Tour is a big one. I had the privilege of making a presentation on that one at the last FCCA cruise conference. This Choiseul Earth Tour is really about the life of people of Choiseul. We know their prowess in the clay products. Senator Antoine might be better and I have a better understanding. Yeah. But there are certain things. The Amerindian heritage, thank you, Senator, Salty Bush Choiseul, it even shows in their features. There are certain features, the shabbing thing, and there are certain things that are synonymous with certain communities. And we want people, not just the visitors, St. Lucians, to be able to use that to sell the community and to be proud of what they are, and other people coming in to appreciate it, develop it into a tourism product, and they can make a living out of it. Madam President, I can go on with a number of others, but I can tell you that there are quite a few to be launched. The Pelican Tours in Ancillary, the Pedals Paradise in Canaries, the Cook Like a Lucian in Vieux-Fort. In Vieux-Fort. I'm really happy to hear about that one. Senator Toussaint might like this one. And the Harmony Apartments, that's in Grosley. So, Madam President, we're also working with the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College to deliver training programs in the CTA to help bring our potential owners and business people in the industry up to par with the standards that are required on the international market. So, Madam President, in all what we're doing, there are processes we have to go through. So we have to come to the Parliament to deal with the legislation, but we also have to set up the agencies and the mechanisms to make it work. And we are not doing it vitae. We are looking at things that are unique to the community. I want to mention something from the community where Senator Norbert is from. Not his constituency, but the community within the Miku North area, Poilin. One of the initiatives that we are pushing and we are working on right now is the CMOS experience, because there are a number of farmers, CMOS farmers in the area. I suspect Senator Norbert may even have a direct interest in that. And he understands the lifestyle of the people of the community, and because of where the community is located, the dependency on the ocean and the CMOS farming. And we want to create that experience from the harvesting of the CMOS to the processing until you make it into the various products where you can label, you can come in and have the full experience and live with your CMOS package, whether it's a drink or a soap bar or something that was created out of the product, as something that you as either an owner or a customer can be proud of. So, Madam President, all of that is part of the whole concept of the community tourism product that we are working on. And I'm very pleased to inform you, Madam President, that around this country, no matter which community you go to, there are unique assets that Senator Charles, very thankful to you, sir, we can map, we can identify, we can put in our database. Target these. There are some communities where we have a whole lot of waterfalls. Somebody took me to Salty Bush some time ago. Salty Bustini waterfall. See, waterfall upon waterfall. The further you go, the more waterfalls you see. And you're talking about clean water, fresh water. Waterfalls, Madam President. See, they have drops, like a few feet, but there are some of these things that are real falls, good, real, authentic stuff. And in my own community, in Fort de Risseau, in Dimai, you go up the river there and waterfalls galore. And we have to be able, and water drops. We have to be able to identify these assets, preserve them, and help the community people develop them into things that can make money for them to make a living. And so, Madam President, it is against that kind of context and backdrop that we are coming here to make these amendments to allow for these agencies to work on behalf of the community tourism agency so that a better quality product can be developed for our people, for us to benefit. And so I really appreciated the contributions, and I really want to ask that we continue to give our people opportunity where they can use the skills, their talents, and the assets of the communities to make a living for themselves and to own the tourism industry that belongs to all of us. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the Community Tourism Development Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Community Tourism Development Act, Cap 15.43.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Amendment of Section 66.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 67.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 6.
Amendment of Section 68.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the Committee Tourism Development Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Community Tourism Development Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Community Tourism Development Amendment Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate be stand suspended until 3 in the afternoon.
Senators, the question is that the sitting of the Senate be suspended until 3 p.m. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting suspended.
All right.
We have now come to the end of the first half of suspension in proceedings here at the Senate for today, October 28, 2025. As we are aware that the Senate was in discussion for the motions and bills which were presented today in the lower house. we saw that one of the first, prior to the discussions, we saw that there were two new senators by the opposition. The Speaker or the President of the Senate, sorry, having said earlier that she had received the resignations of the senators from the opposition, the Honorable Dominic Fede, the leader of opposition business, and Honorable Harold Stanislas, and they are being replaced today by the UWP proposed candidates, Mr. Tommy Descott and Senator Tommy Descott, and now Mr. Elisha Norbert. They are there representing the opposition United Workers' Party in the Senate. Michael, welcome as well.
Oui, merci un peu, Virgil, avec un bon après-midi pour tout le monde qui a écouté nous à présent. Nous, en cas constitutionnel, pour session Sénat là, comme la coutume, nous avons après en session, et puis c'est même Parlement qui est électé. Là, nous avons créé un cas constitutionnel, nous avons toujours venir, et puis c'est même là qui est sélecté pour passer loi. Avec Jodia, comme vous dites, nous avons deux membres Sénat là qui étaient assis en dernière session et qui étaient là pour tout le temps. Ça c'était sénateur Dominic Fede avec sénateur Harold Stanislas. Ils ont résigné position pour bailler, pour faire les pour deux autres sénateurs qui sont montés aujourd'hui. C'est sénateur aidez-moi et puis non encore sénateur Tommy Descott avec sénateur Elisha Norbert. Ils ont replacé, comme on dit, c'est des qui résigné position. Avec ça nous discuter plus bon, c'est pour motion qui tout passait assez bien, mais pas tenir en chaille un débat assez. Il y a des petits points quand même, moi ça c'est un cas concept, mais en finissant tout le bagage allait bien avec il semblait nous dévier, il a préparé pour ces trois billes là, ça c'est deux associés à IPA avec Yon ça nous a créé pensions. So, nous avons dévié à 3h après-midi pour nous continuer. Nous avons resté puis nous avec pendant temps nous avons dévié en studio NTN. Merci avec changer nous avons dévié à 3h.